Chapter 3901. Blue Scorpion Divine King's words not only answered Divine King Thousandwood's doubts, but also reassured him. At least he knew that Golden Crow clan leader and Blue Scorpion Divine King were only here temporarily, and would leave soon. As such, he only needed to perform well during this period of time and be vigilant. After Blue Scorpion Divine King and Golden Crow clan leader left, he would still be the overlord of Thousandwood Star, and his power would not be affected. Most importantly, Blue Scorpion Divine King would still have rewards and rewards. With a satisfied mood, Divine King Thousandwood left the study room and continued to carry out his orders and mobilize his men. However, as soon as he left the Divine Palace, a messenger guard rushed over with a hurried expression and blocked his path. Reporting to Star-Lord, "We have lost contact with the 3 patrol teams in the ice fields behind the God Palace." Divine King Thousandwood was only a title to outsiders. The citizens of Thousandwood Star all addressed him as Lord Star-Lord. Suddenly hearing this news, Divine King Thousandwood's expression froze and his eyes flashed with intense vigilance. 3 patrol teams and over 60 Monarch God experts have lost contact with all of them? What about Commander Gu? Something happened to his team. Why didn't he go check on the situation? The messenger guard hurriedly explained, "Master Star-Lord, just half an hour ago, Commander Gu received this news. He brought 20 personal guards and rushed over to investigate personally. But we have lost contact with Commander Gu now." Commander Gu was a guard commander and a 3rd-degree God King expert. He had always been highly regarded by Divine King Thousandwood. Divine King Thousandwood sensed that something was amiss and asked in a deep voice, "Go to the Tribute Spirit Hall and see if Commander Gu's Soul Jade token has shattered. Also, pass down the order for everyone to tighten their defenses and protect the God Palace." "Yes." The messenger guard bowed and immediately turned to leave. Divine King Thousandwood frowned and thought for a moment before shouting again, "Come back. Go gather the 4 commanders and follow me to investigate the situation. Later, report this matter to Lord Alliance Master, and inform me immediately if there is any news." Understood. The messenger guard bowed again and quickly flew off to carry out the order. The 4 guard commanders were very fast. When God King Thousandwood reached the plaza in front of the palace and looked at the icy plains in the north, he was pondering with a gloomy expression. The 4 commanders had already arrived. For the time being they didn't know what had happened. However, when they saw God King Thousandwood's solemn expression, they guessed that something bad was going to happen. "Go." God King Thousandwood did not explain further. He immediately led the 4 commanders into the sky and flew towards the wilderness in the north. Along the way, the 4 God King commanders followed behind him. One of them could not help but ask, "Star-Lord, what happened? Is there any movement in the north?" Another commander chimed in, "Tens of thousands of miles to the north is the end of the ice field. The defenses there are the weakest. Who would want to break in from there?" God King Thousandwood did not plan to hide it from them. He explained, "I just received news that we lost contact with the 3 patrol teams in the north. Commander Gu went to check on the situation and something happened to him." The 4 commanders were shocked, and their expressions and eyes became solemn. Something actually happened to Commander Gu? He's a 3rd-degree Divine King. Who invaded this place? It must be a Divine King expert. Star-Lord, could it be that the invader is related to the Alliance Master and the Golden Crow clan leader? Isn't it obvious? It must be the person who is chasing after the Golden Crow clan leader. Isn't the Golden Crow clan leader a peak Divine King? The expert who dares to chase after him should at least be a peak Divine King? If it's really a peak Divine King who invaded, wouldn't we be dead meat? The 4 commanders were whispering to each other as they discussed. When one of the commanders said the last sentence, everyone fell silent. Their expressions became extremely horrified. Even God King Thousandwood was stunned. A smear of shock and worry flashed past his eyes. However, as the Star-Lord, how could he show fear at this time? Moreover, this was just the 4 commanders' wild guess. They did not even see the invader's shadow and they were frightened. That was too embarrassing. After a moment of silence, God King Thousandwood ordered sternly, "All of you shut up. A peak Divine King is not a nobody. How can you meet him whenever you want? Whoever dares to talk nonsense and disturb the army's morale, This king will definitely punish severely. The 4 commanders kept quiet out of fear. They did not dare to talk nonsense anymore. The 5 divine kings maintained their silence. They flew above the ice plains as fast as lightning and released their divine senses to search the surroundings. Originally, God King Thousandwood's target was 80,000 miles away. That was the end of the ice plains. However, they had just flown 20,000 miles when God King Thousandwood's divine senses detected that there were over a dozen corpses lying on the ice plains to the front left. Over here. God King Thousandwood immediately led the 4 commanders and flew towards the front left. The 5 people flew another 20,000 miles before landing near the pile of corpses. On the ice plains covered in white snow, there were over a dozen dark red bloodstains scattered. More than half of them were already covered by the snow. Those dozen over corpses had long stiffened and were almost frozen into ice sculptures. However, most of the corpses were intact. Even the armor on their bodies and the swords in their hands were also intact. God King Thousandwood and the 4 commanders could tell at a glance that those dozen over corpses were Commander Gu and his personal guards. 16 high-level Divine Lord personal guards and Commander Gu, who was at the 3rd level of the Divine King realm, had all died here. God King Thousandwood checked the wounds on the corpses and realized that every corpse was killed in one move. The wounds were usually in between the eyebrows, forehead, skull, back of the head and other vital areas. Moreover, the wounds were extremely small. There were a few corpses that did not bleed and had no wounds on their bodies. However, their divine sparks were shattered. Sensing this, God King Thousandwood's brows were tightly knitted together. His eyes became increasingly solemn and fearful. To be able to kill Commander Gu in one move, he must be at least a 6th level Divine King. There's even a possibility that he's a high-level Divine King. God King Thousandwood was even more worried and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. The 4 commanders looked at Commander Gu's corpse. They were filled with grief and indignation. However, they felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. After a moment of silence, God King Thousandwood ordered in a deep voice, "Move their corpses back and bury them after this matter is over." The 4 commanders acknowledged his order and hurriedly went to collect the corpses. After they were done, one of them asked Star-Lord, "Are we still going to continue heading north?" "There's no need." God King Thousandwood said expressionlessly, "The invaders have already killed their way here. They're near us now. There's no point in continuing north. Return to the God Palace immediately. I want to gather all my forces to protect the God Palace." After he finished speaking, he led the 4 commanders into the sky and returned to the God Palace in the south. However, just as they flew into the sky, they saw 2 figures appearing out of thin air above the ice plains. Book Guest Residence Reading Website. Chapter 3902. The 2 figures were tall and handsome. On the left was a handsome youth in a white robe. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. His cultivation realm could not be determined. He was emitting a mysterious pressure. On the right was a youth in a crimson armor and a purple cape. He wore blood-red gloves covered with dragon scales. There were some wounds on his face and neck, but it did not affect his battle. The murderous aura in his eyes was even denser. Similarly, no one could determine the cultivation realm of this youth in crimson armor. But Divine King Thousandwood knew that there was only one kind of person he could not see through. That was a peak Divine King. At this moment, Divine King Thousandwood's heart twitched violently. A trace of despair flashed across his eyes. He was very clear what this meant. The 4 guard commanders were also dumbfounded. Although they could not see through the cultivation realm of the 2 youths, they knew that to be able to make the Star-Lord's expression so ugly and his eyes so desperate, the 2 youths were most likely peak Divine Kings. Damn it! The Star-Lord just said that peak Divine Kings are not cats and dogs. They are not easy to meet. Now, 2 of them appeared all of a sudden. It's over. We are dead meat. They are indeed here to kill the Golden Crow tribe leader. 2 of them came at once. The 4 commanders' hearts were beating like drums. Their eyes were filled with fear. They stared at the 2 youths and subconsciously gripped their swords and sabers tightly. They were ready to unleash the final attack at any time. Fortunately, Divine King Thousandwood was a Star-Lord who controlled a star. He quickly calmed down. He raised his hand slightly, indicating for the 4 commanders not to act rashly. Then, he bowed to the 2 youths and asked, "Are the 2 of you here to kill the Golden Crow tribe leader?" The youth in crimson armor and the youth in white robe exchanged glances and communicated secretly. "Long Tian, this person knows our intention. That means that the Golden Crow tribe leader is indeed hiding here to recuperate." You guessed right. Without a doubt, these 2 youths were Long Yan and Ji Tianxing. Previously, when they came to the ice field and saw many guards patrolling, they realized that there was something wrong with Heavenspan Divine Palace. Now, Divine King Thousand Wood's words confirmed their guess. Ji Tianxing didn't say anything. Long Yan stared at God King Thousand Wood and sneered. "You're God King Thousand Wood?" He was quite knowledgeable. "Although you already know the answer, I'm willing to answer you." "That's right." With the answer confirmed, the last trace of hope in God King Thousand Wood's heart vanished. He looked at the 2 young men and said calmly, "If it's possible, I'd like to ask the 2 seniors to spare our lives. After all, we are just following orders and have no enmity with the 2 seniors." Long Yan warmed up his hands and swung his blood-red blood-flame gloves. He sneered, "How can there be no enmity? We've just killed dozens of your subordinates." Divine King Thousand Wood hurriedly lowered his head and cupped his fists in apology. They were blind and offended the 2 seniors. They deserved to be killed. "Haha, interesting." Long Yan raised his eyebrows. Ji Tianxing also smiled faintly. Seeing that the situation had taken a turn for the better, Divine King Thousand Wood continued, "This is between the 2 seniors and the leader of the Golden Crow tribe. We don't know about it and don't want to interfere. As long as the 2 seniors let us go, we'll leave Thousand Wood Star now and won't interfere." Ji Tianxing looked at Long Yan and asked telepathically, "Didn't you say that Divine King Thousand Wood is Blue Scorpion Divine King's loyal subordinate? He's so fickle and cowardly. Where's his loyalty?" Long Yan explained telepathically, "Loyal subordinates are only relative to other star lords. If there's no threat to his life, Divine King Thousand Wood will still obey Blue Scorpion Divine King. But their loyalty is cheap and they won't sacrifice their lives for it. It's not strange that the alien races in the major star fields are like this. After all, their culture and ideas are different from ours." Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood. Long Yan then said to Divine King Thousand Wood, "I understand your feelings and know that you don't want to lose your lives for nothing. But I don't trust you and can't let you go." Divine King Thousand Wood frowned as his face turned uglier. The 4 commanders were also shocked. Their hearts, which had just been relieved, were in their throats again. Their eyes were filled with grief, anger and despair. Long Yan waved his blood-flame glove and shot out 4 beams of scarlet divine light that hit the 4 commanders. Bam! 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 After a series of muffled sounds, the 4 commanders' bodies stiffened and fell to the ice plains unconscious. Divine King Thousand Wood's nerves were stretched to the limit as the divine power in his body reached its peak. He was about to teleport away. At this moment, Long Yan's voice was heard. "I can spare your lives, but to avoid unnecessary trouble, I'll have to ask you to sleep here for 2 days." Divine King Thousand Wood was taken aback as he quickly used his divine senses to check on the 4 commanders. He was relieved when he found that they were not dead and had only fainted. "Thank you, Senior, for sparing our lives." He slowly dispersed the divine power in his body and bowed deeply. Long Yan did not speak further. He waved his fist and shot out 2 beams of divine light that hit Divine King Thousand Wood. Bam! Divine King Thousand Wood also suffered a heavy blow to his divine soul. He blacked out and fell to the ice plains as his consciousness fell into a deep sleep. The icy plain fell into silence. Only the heavy snowflakes were falling silently. Swoosh! Swoosh! Ji Tianxing and Long Yan's figures disappeared as they rushed towards the south, heading straight for the Skirich Divine Palace on the Ice Mountain. A few breaths later, the 2 appeared above the Ice Mountain and looked down at the Skirich Divine Palace on the mountain peak. The 2 of them didn't hide their figures, nor did they hide their auras. They just appeared in the open like that. The thousands of guards around the Divine Palace and the 8 Divine Kings guarding the Divine Palace immediately discovered their tracks. Suddenly, the sound of horns and urgent shouts could be heard around the Divine Palace. Hundreds of guards rushed over from all directions and surrounded Ji Tianqing and Long Yan in the sky. At the same time, on the ice plains around the ice mountain, there were teams after teams rushing back to the divine palace under orders. Ji Tianqing and Long Yan ignored the hundreds of guards around them, as their attention was on the Skirich divine palace. The two people's divine senses clearly detected that there were 10 divine king powerhouses auras in the divine palace. 8 middle-level divine kings were guarding every corner of the divine palace. At this moment they were all gathered in the main hall. A high god king in blue robes, with a vicious face and 3 hands, hurried to a secret room with 8 other god kings. In the secret room protected by a divine array, there was a chaotic aura of a peak divine king. Ji Tianqing and Long Yan looked at each other and smiled. Found him. He is indeed here. Looks like you injured him quite badly. His divine spark is probably cracked? The two of them talked cheerfully and wittily, ignoring the many guards. However, their divine senses were constantly monitoring the many divine kings in the divine palace. They detected that Blue Scorpion Divine King seemed to have used some divine artifact to keep the heavily injured Golden Crow tribe leader. Then Blue Scorpion Divine King led 8 divine king guards and wanted to escape from the back of the divine palace. Chapter 3903. Blue Scorpion Godly King doesn't dare to show his face and wants to slip away? Long Yan frowned, looking at the heaven-span god palace with a look of contempt. Ji Tianqing said with a faint smile, he's still considered smart, knowing that if he slips away now, there's still that tiny bit of chance. If he fights with us for a few dozen moves and flees after getting injured, there'll be no chance at all. The two chatted while using their divine senses to monitor the activity inside the heaven-span god palace. Seeing Blue Scorpion Godly King bring 8 Godly King guards and sneak into the underground of the god palace, about to activate a divine array, Long Yan raised his brows. That fellow is rather cunning, having long set up a teleportation grand array in the underground palace. We should take action. If we let him slip away through the teleportation grand array, it'll be over. Don't panic, he can't escape. Ji Tianqing smiled, crossing hundreds of thousands of feet with a step, passing through the encirclement of many guards and appearing in front of the Heaven-span God Palace's gates. Buzz! The Heaven-span God Palace's defensive grand array had long been activated. Receiving the impact of his divine power, it was instantly activated. A massive oval-shaped light barrier enveloped the entire Heaven-span God Palace, lighting up with 5-colored divine light. This was a high-grade king-level divine array, something that thousand-wood godly kings spent decades of painstaking effort to set up. Under normal circumstances with Ji Tianqing's array Dao attainments, it would take at least 15 minutes to crack this divine array. And within this 15 minutes, Blue Scorpion Godly King would have long activated the teleportation grand array, and fled with the 8 Godly King guards. This was the tiny bit of chance that Ji Tianqing mentioned, and also where Blue Scorpion Godly King was smart. Swish! Long Yan also teleported hundreds of thousands of feet, breaking through the encirclement of several hundred guards, and appeared in front of the God Palace's gates. Looking at the grand array with a revolving halo, he clenched both fists and said in a deep voice, at most 20 breaths, they can activate the teleportation grand array and escape this place. Cracking the defensive grand array is too time-consuming. I'll directly blast it open. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, You're injured, better let me do it. Actually, this was only one reason. More importantly, Long Yan did not observe this defensive grand array. He only wanted to borrow the power of the blood flame gloves to forcefully blast open the grand array. And Long Yan's as Divine King, the God Palace's head to the God Palace's palace. His rights two's pointed, his rights, his was 2 finger to fingers. Endless divine power burst out from his 2 fingers, shining with dazzling golden light. Crack! Crack! Of, teat, SSSSAS crack 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 crack. S if S is S is God is S is 2 is? Rights 2's A's is that's is S's at this time. The hundreds of guards came back to their senses and rushed over with murderous intent. But they were too slow. By the time they passed through the gap in the array and entered the divine palace, Ji Tianqing and Long Yan had already entered the underground palace. In the dimly lit underground palace, The ground was engraved with dense array patterns, which were used to gather the divine power of heaven and earth. In the middle of the underground palace, there was an altar with a radius of 300 meters. It was built with expensive materials and gems. That was the teleportation array. At this moment, the blue scorpion god king was standing in the middle of the array with 8 god king guards scattered around him. They were all working together to activate the teleportation array. Judging from the energy fluctuations of the altar and the white light emitted by the runes, they had already activated more than half of it. In at most 5 breaths of time, the teleportation array would be successfully activated. Unfortunately, he was only 1 step away, but he would never be able to complete it. Swoosh! Swish! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing and Long Yan appeared in the underground palace, standing on top of the altar. The two of them looked down at Blue Scorpion God King and the others, sneering. The Blue Scorpion God King and the 8 God King guards were all startled. Deep shock appeared on their faces. How can they be so fast? Damn it! The defensive array of the Divine Palace is actually so weak? It's over. Our teleportation array hasn't been activated yet. These thoughts flashed through the minds of the God Kings at the same time. The Blue Scorpion God King's eyes were filled with anger and helplessness. He could only stop casting and put all his attention on Ji Tianqing and Long Yan. He knew that this battle was unavoidable. But the 8 God King guards were still unwilling to give up struggling. They were still desperately casting spells to activate the divine array. Truly reckless and reckless. Long Yan frowned. With a cold snort, he raised his hands and fired out 8 beams of divine light. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The divine light that contained over 100 laws turned into 8 sharp swords, stabbing at the 8 God King guards. 4 of them realized that things were not good and retreated decisively. As for the other 4 God Kings, it was too late to dodge even if they wanted to. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds rang out. Divine light flickered on the altar as blood splattered. The 4 God Kings who fled in time were heavily injured by the sword light. Their bodies were covered in blood as they cried out in pain. The other 4 God Kings who reacted slower were unable to avoid being hit in their vitals. Their hearts or heads were pierced by the sword light. 2 divine bodies were destroyed. Only their divine spark survived. The other 2 were the most unlucky. Their heads exploded, their divine sparks crumbled, and they directly perished. Immediately, the underground palace was filled with a thick stench of blood. The 2 divine sparks that survived and the 4 heavily injured God Kings all shrunk behind the Blue Scorpion God King, looking at Ji Tianqing and Long Yan with fear. And at this time, several hundred Divine Lord Realm guards rushed into the underground palace like a tide and just happened to see this scene. Kiki! Kiki! Seeing Long Yan instantly kill 2 God Kings and heavily injure 6 God Kings the moment he attacked, many guards were filled with fear, their teeth chattering. No matter how many guards there were, they were scared out of their wits. They all shrunk into a dark corner of the underground palace, not daring to go forward and shout. In fact, if not for the Blue Scorpion God King's presence, those few hundred guards would have turned around and fled long ago. The Blue Scorpion God King saw his subordinates being killed and heavily injured with his own eyes, but he did not even have the courage to block or help. Because Ji Tianqing, who had not made a move all this time, had already locked onto his aura. The moment he made the slightest move, he would definitely be met with a calamity. The atmosphere in the underground palace was heavy and oppressive. It seemed to be even colder than before. The Blue Scorpion God King took a few deep breaths before calming down. He said in a low voice, Long Yan, you actually chased us all the way from the Dragon Realm. Is there a need to kill us all? Long Yan spread out his hands and said indifferently, this king said before that I cannot kill the Golden Crow tribe leader as long as he admits defeat, surrenders, and swears a heavenly law oath. It was you who refused to believe me. Are you blaming this king? The Blue Scorpion God King frowned fiercely, but he was speechless. He glanced at Ji Tianqing and asked Long Yan, who is this person? Where did you find another Peak God King to help? Long Yan said with a cold smile, Blue Scorpion God King, you don't have the qualifications to know this. Enough nonsense, hand over the Golden Crow tribe leader. Chapter 3904. Long Yan's words sounded very strange. Those who did not know the whole story would think that Blue Scorpion God King had kidnapped the Golden Crow clan leader, and that he had come to rescue him. But the truth was exactly the opposite. Blue Scorpion God King was silently accumulating his divine power. His body was surrounded by deep blue lightning, and his hands were holding a pair of divine hooks. He stared at Long Yan with a sharp gaze and shouted coldly, "The Golden Crow clan leader is this king's sworn brother. Even if this king dies here, I will not hand him over to you." "Is that so?" Long Yan's gaze and tone became even colder. "Since you are so loyal, then die for him." Long Yan gradually clenched his fists, and the blood flame gloves also lit up with a dark red light. A formless killing aura instantly filled the underground palace, causing the hundreds of guards to turn pale with fear. "Wait a moment." Blue Scorpion God King suddenly raised his hand to stop Long Yan and shouted, "These soldiers are innocent. We will fight in outer space." Hearing his words, the hundreds of guards in the underground palace were so moved that they were about to cry. Alliance Master could not even protect himself, but he did not forget to fight for their lives. This made them respect Blue Scorpion God King even more. If Alliance Master could survive this calamity, they would definitely be even more loyal. Long Yan glanced at Blue Scorpion God King and sneered, "Blue Scorpion God King, who kills people like scything flax, actually cares about the lives of your subordinates? Don't play tricks. Do you want to take the chance to escape? You should know that you have no chance." Blue Scorpion God King's eyes flashed with hatred, and he felt even more despair. His thoughts had been seen through by Long Yan. Even his last chance to escape was cut off. How could he not feel despair? However, Blue Scorpion God King did not expect that Ji Tianxing would speak at this time. "This king can promise you that we will fight in outer space." Long Yan was slightly surprised and turned to look at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing gave him a reassuring look, indicating that there was no problem. Long Yan thought that it made sense. Blue Scorpion God King's 8 God King bodyguards were all crippled, so there was no way they could escape. The Blue Scorpion God King let out a sigh of relief and looked at Ji Tianxing in surprise. But he didn't say much. His figure flashed and left the divine palace, flying high into the sky. He waved his 2 hooks and tore apart the dark clouds in the sky, creating a 10-meter-long spatial rift. Swish! He passed through the spatial crack and entered the void in a flash. Ji Tianxing and Long Yan followed closely behind. They flew high into the sky and passed through the crack into the void. As for the 6 heavily injured God Kings and the several hundred guards, they remained in the underground palace. When Blue Scorpion Divine King, Ji Tianxing and Long Yan left, everyone let out a sigh of relief and left the underground palace. This was Blue Scorpion God King's last chance to escape. Just as he entered the cold and gloomy void, he took out a bronze compass the size of a wash basin. This item originated from ancient times and was the Great Star Compass refined by a peak God King. It was a high-grade king-tier divine artifact. This divine artifact could gather the power of endless stars and travel in the void at the speed of light. Furthermore, when the Great Star Compass's power was pushed to the limit, it could teleport to the nearest star. Of course, using the Great Star Compass to teleport once would require it to hibernate for a few hundred years before it could recover. For close to 10,000 years, Blue Scorpion God King had always treated the Great Star Compass as his trump card. He had only used it a few times to save his life at crucial moments. In the underground palace's teleportation array, Ji Tianxing and Long Yan were staring at him, so he naturally didn't have the chance to use the Great Star Compass. Therefore, he feigned civility and requested to go to the outer realm to fight for this short opportunity. Long Yan rejected him, causing him to be in complete despair. But Ji Tianxing agreed to his request, reigniting his hope. Swish! Blue Scorpion God King held the rusty Great Star Compass with both hands, and did not hesitate to pour all his divine power into the compass. Immediately, the Great Star Compass lit up with dazzling starlight and released a vast and mighty star divine power. It looked like the Great Star Compass's power was about to be pushed to the limit and bring Blue Scorpion God King away from the Thousand Jupiter star to teleport to a nearby star. His divine power was rapidly depleting, and his entire body became very weak. But he was extremely excited, and his eyes were filled with hope for survival. He was laughing and shouting in his heart. "Ha ha ha ha, so what if you are a peak God King? You are too arrogant. This king wants to escape now. What can you do to me? As long as he used the great star compass to escape from the 1000 Jupiter star and teleport to a nearby star, he would really escape. No matter how strong Ji Tianqing and Long Yan were, they couldn't cross tens of millions of miles and chase to another star. However, just as Blue Scorpion God King was filled with excitement and couldn't control himself, something unexpected happened. Swish! A pitch-black ancient divine bell flew over from not far away and floated above his head. The divine bell released a dazzling white divine light that poured down like a curtain, instantly enveloping the surrounding 50 kilometers. That white divine light contained an extremely powerful spatial energy that sealed off the surrounding 50 kilometers. Blue Scorpion God King and the Great Star Compass were both suppressed by the divine power. Even though the Great Star Compass's power suddenly erupted, and a soaring starlight enveloped Blue Scorpion God King's figure, the Great Star Compass did not teleport him away. However, the Great Star Compass didn't bring him away, instead teleporting him to a nearby star. Blue Scorpion God King was still holding the Great Star Compass, motionless in place. How can this be? The Blue Scorpion God King was dumbfounded. His excitement turned into shock and despair. He simply could not believe that the Great Star Compass had lost its effect. It must be that light curtain that sealed off this space. I understand now. It's that divine bell. The panic-stricken Blue Scorpion God King looked around, and in the end, he looked at the divine bell above his head and guessed the reason. Then he saw Ji Tianqing and Long Yan fly over from not far away and land outside the white light curtain. The two had faint sneers on their faces as they calmly looked at Blue Scorpion God King. That faint sneer was filled with mockery and disdain in Blue Scorpion God King's eyes. His heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cellar, and his entire body was covered in despair. Why is it like this? I clearly could have escaped. Blue Scorpion God King looked as if he had lost his soul as he muttered in a daze. His lifeless gaze passed through the rippling and twisting white light curtain to look at Ji Tianqing and Long Yan's figures. He felt extremely helpless. Ji Tianqing expressionlessly said, "Your strength limits your imagination. The escape methods you can think of are actually already used by this king many years ago. In addition, in front of a peak God King and a top-quality king-grade divine artifact, you don't have the slightest hope of escaping." At this moment, Blue Scorpion God King finally understood that the Black Divine Bell was a top-quality king-grade divine artifact. The last trace of hope in his heart was extinguished, and he completely gave up on the idea of escaping. Chapter 3905. I can't win against you. You can kill me or torture me as you wish. Blue Scorpion God King put away the great astral disc with a dejected expression and said with a hunched back. Long Yan stared at him with a sharp gaze and said in a deep voice, "Hand over the Golden Crow Patriarch and I'll spare your life." Are you serious? Blue Scorpion God King's eyes, which were already filled with despair, revealed a trace of surprise and joy. He thought that Long Yan and Ji Tianqing would definitely kill him, and the Golden Crow Patriarch after going through so much trouble. However, he did not expect that the other party would leave him with a chance to live. Of course it's true. Long Yan frowned and said in a deep voice, "Hand over the Golden Crow Patriarch and I'll let you go." Blue Scorpion God King was still a little hesitant and said, "I don't dare to believe your words easily unless you swear to the heavens." Long Yan immediately sneered and said in a contemptuous tone, "Your life and death are in our hands. Whether you believe it or not, do you have the right to choose?" Blue Scorpion God King was instantly speechless. That's right, he was now a fish on the chopping block. How could he have the right to bargain? If he did not believe Long Yan and did not hand over the Golden Crow Patriarch, he would definitely die. If he chose to believe Long Yan, he might really be able to live. After deliberating for a moment, Blue Scorpion God King asked again, "I can believe you, but you will definitely kill the Golden Crow Patriarch, right?" Long Yan frowned and said in a cold tone, "How to deal with the Golden Crow Patriarch is my business. If you continue to spout nonsense, I'll kill you right now." Calm down, calm down. Blue Scorpion God King hurriedly waved his hands and begged for mercy. He dawdled for a moment before gritting his teeth and making up his mind to open the internal space of the divine hook. Swoosh! A thin figure wrapped in a blue light appeared in front of him. Within the blue light was a golden-haired old man in a golden robe. He was covered in wounds and his aura was chaotic and weak. Clearly, this golden-haired old man was the Golden Crow Patriarch. His injuries were still very serious, but he was not unconscious and was already awake. As the blue light dissipated, he stood in the void and looked expressionlessly at Blue Scorpion God King. That pair of deep and aged eyes carried a trace of deep disappointment and helplessness. The Blue Scorpion God King was filled with guilt and did not dare to meet the Golden Crow Patriarch's gaze. He could only turn his head and say in a low voice, "Big brother, I'm sorry." The chief of the Golden Crow tribe retracted his gaze and no longer looked at him. At this moment, Primordial Chaos Primordial Bell. The curtain, of course, the Scorpion God Kings. Oh. Blue Scorpion God King secretly sighed in relief and hurriedly fled into the depths of the void, swiftly distancing himself from the Golden Crow Patriarch, Long Yan and Ji Tianxing. What he was worried about did not happen. Long Yan and Ji Tianxing did not stop him. After escaping for tens of thousands of miles, he stopped in the void and quietly observed the situation. The Golden Crow Patriarch faced Long Yan and Ji Tianxing calmly and said, "Long Yan, even though I was very cautious, I still underestimated you." He was currently at his weakest. His combat strength was less than 30% of his peak. Therefore, he did not have any thoughts of resisting or escaping. He knew that no matter how he tried to escape, it would be futile. He had already accepted his fate and appeared even more carefree. Long Yan looked at him and said with a smile, "Back then, you and Patriarch Lu Wu lost to me. Now, without the help of Uncle Sky Dragon and Uncle Black Dragon, you still lost. Therefore, this is fate. I am the Crimson Dragon Emperor. This is the choice of the heavens." The Golden Crow Patriarch obviously did not want to talk about the past. He was also not like a normal divine king who would refuse to admit defeat and curse. He appeared to be very calm. He looked at Long Yan and then looked at Ji Tianxing and asked, "Your helper is also a peak divine king? Why does he look so unfamiliar?" In his impression, the Crimson Dragon continent did not have a fourth peak divine king, and it was impossible for him to be so young. Unfamiliar. Long Yan raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, "He is my good brother, Uncle Sky Dragon's only disciple, Long Tian." "It's you." The Golden Crow Patriarch's pupils contracted, and he revealed an extremely shocked expression. He stared at Ji Tianxing. "You disappeared for more than 1,000 years and became a peak divine king? That Long Tian from Star Source Continent is you?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and did not say much. After all, he did not know the Golden Crow Patriarch and did not have any relationship. The Golden Crow Patriarch closed his eyes in despair and revealed a bitter smile on his face. "More than a year ago, I heard about what happened in Star Source Continent. I originally thought that you would stay in Star Source Continent and spend more than 100 years to gradually conquer the entire continent. Haha. I should have known that Long Yan would definitely ask you for help when he encountered such a predicament. Since both of you joined hands, then I have no regrets in losing." Ji Tianxing said calmly, "The Dragon Clan is the king of all beasts after all. Even if they were punished by heaven, it is still their destiny. Otherwise, why would the demon realm be called the Dragon Realm? It is impossible for the Golden Crow clan to ascend to the throne. Even if I did not help Long Yan, you are destined to not succeed." The Golden Crow Patriarch only smiled and did not refute. Although he did not agree with this logic and did not feel that the Dragon Clan was destined, he always believed that no clan would prosper forever. Even the Dragon Clan would be defeated and die. But he was the loser now and did not have the right to say these words. "Long Yan, you just said Patriarch Lu Wu was also defeated?" The Golden Crow Patriarch recalled Long Yan's words and could not help but ask. Long Yan did not hide and nodded. "That's right. Long Tian had already infiltrated Purple Cloud Grotto Heaven and finished off the Lu Wu clan long before I chased after you. When you escaped from the Dragon Realm, the Lu Wu clan's army of millions had already retreated." The Golden Crow Patriarch took a deep look at Long Tian and said with a shocked expression, "The Lu Wu clan's power is not any weaker than the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. It is hard to believe that you actually infiltrated Purple Cloud Grotto Heaven alone and killed Patriarch Lu Wu. Your current strength and methods are not much different from your master." Heaven-sealing Dragon Emperor. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said calmly, Patriarch Lu Wu is not dead, but he will not fight for the position of Dragon Emperor in the future. What? The Golden Crow Patriarch was stunned. You didn't kill him? Then how can he withdraw his army and promise not to fight for the position of Dragon Emperor? Ji Tianqing gave a meaningful smile. You will know the answer soon. Long Yan had a tacit understanding with him. Without needing him to signal, he took out a jade slip and threw it in front of the Golden Crow Patriarch. Swear a heavenly Tao oath according to this jade slip, and our feud will be considered settled. The Golden Crow Patriarch did not take the jade slip and was stunned again. His expression was even more stunned. Long Yan, what do you mean? You won't kill me? Long Yan smiled and said, killing you is only the last resort. If there is any way to end the feud without killing you, then I am of course willing to try. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3906. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe did not believe that Long Yan would be so kind as to spare his life. No matter how sincere Long Yan's tone was, he was still on guard. There was only one thought in his mind. Why didn't Long Yan kill me? How can he not kill me? He must have some scheme. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was silent. His mind spun quickly as he tried to guess what Long Yan's scheme was. However, he could not think of an answer even after thinking for 10 breaths of time. The reason Long Yan didn't kill me must be because he can get more benefits. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was firm in this thought. He stared at Long Yan with a dark gaze and asked in a deep voice, what do you want? If you're delusional enough to bribe me and subdue the entire Golden Crow clan, then I advise you to give up on that thought immediately. Long Yan gave a disdainful sneer. The Golden Crow tribe is a sinful tribe. They have already withered to such a state. You think I would like them? Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Hurry up and swear. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe was skeptical. He reached out to take the jade scroll and check the contents. He felt that Long Yan's scheme and goal would definitely be hidden in this jade scroll. When he used his consciousness to read the heavenly oath in the jade scroll, anger appeared on his face. Endless anger and humiliation surged in his heart. It was not that Long Yan had any scheme or goal. Other than restricting him and the Golden Crow tribe, there was no actual harm. However, the 1,000-word heavenly oath was meticulous, perfect, and covered all aspects. There was no loophole to exploit. If the leader of the Golden Crow tribe swore according to this, then he and the Golden Crow tribe could only give up on the idea. They would never be able to fight for the position of the Dragon Emperor. It would be disadvantageous to the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven, unless he dared to ignore the heavens and violate the oath. Otherwise, he would never have the chance to rise again. This was the real reason why the leader of the Golden Crow tribe was furious. Long Yan, you are too vicious, too ruthless. The leader of the Golden Crow tribe held the jade scroll and glared at Long Yan with hatred. His face also became very ferocious. Ji Tianqing said with an indifferent expression, the fact that you are still alive and the Golden Crow race is not exterminated is already a great mercy. I was the one who made the oath to the heavenly Tao. You can choose not to recite it. I will let you know what true viciousness is. The Golden Crow Patriarch was instantly speechless. His anger and grief quickly dissipated. He regained his composure and knew that Ji Tianqing was right. Long Yan's actions were indeed merciful, and he was the loser. He could only choose to obey or die. There was no other way. After a moment of silence, the Golden Crow tribe leader could only pick up the jade strip and recite the heavenly oath in a low tone. Ji Tianqing and Long Yan looked at him quietly. When the chief of the Golden Crow tribe was halfway through his heavenly oath, a series of muffled thunders resounded in the void. Strands of divine light also appeared around him. After he finished reciting the oath to the heavenly Tao, the thousands of rays of divine light that contained the laws around him became even more dazzling. In fact, a wisp of heavenly Tao power even appeared above his head. It was an almost transparent Tao rune that spun gently before disappearing rapidly. Under the power of the heavenly Tao, the Golden Crow tribe leader only felt immense pressure. He was uneasy and his heart was filled with fear. It was only when the divine light and Tao rune dissipated that the uneasiness and fear in his heart gradually faded. How could this be? I just made an oath and it actually triggered the power of the heavenly Tao? Could this be the true heavenly Tao oath? If I violate the oath just now, wouldn't the heavenly Tao really punish me? Those thoughts flashed through the mind of the Golden Crow tribe leader. Instantly, his heart was in a mess and he became even more fearful. Before he made the oath, he still had a trace of luck in his heart. Even if he violated the oath and rested for a few thousand years before dealing with the divine fire grotto heaven and snatching the position of the Dragon Emperor, he should be fine. However, the appearance of the power of the heavenly Tao and the Tao rune completely shattered his fantasy. He no longer dared to doubt or hope for a fluke. This heavenly Tao oath had already firmly restricted him and the Golden Crow tribe. A wise man submits to circumstances. Golden Crow tribe leader, congratulations, you have survived. Seeing that the Golden Crow tribe leader was still in a daze with a complicated expression, Long Yen waved his hand and shot out a divine light, snatching the jade slip away. At this moment, Ji Tianqing spoke again. Golden Crow tribe leader, you have already fulfilled the first condition. Next, I still want to ask you something. The Golden Crow tribe leader, who was in a daze, came back to his senses and looked at Ji Tianqing with dim eyes. Ji Tianqing asked, about 18 years ago, have you ever seen a human youth? Regarding Wuhan's situation, he briefly explained it. After the Golden Crow tribe leader finished listening, he shook his head expressionlessly. I have never seen or heard of him. Ji Tianqing stared at him sharply and observed for a moment. After confirming that he was not lying, he turned and left. Chief of the Golden Crow tribe, will meet again. Long Yen glanced at the chief of the Golden Crow tribe and left after saying that. The two of them flew side by side and disappeared into the void after a while. Looking at the direction they left, it was obvious that they were returning to the Dragon Realm. The Golden Crow tribe leader stood in place and muttered with a frown, they left just like that? Long Yen really let me and my tribe go? Until now, the Golden Crow tribe leader still found it hard to believe. This unexpected result made all the mental preparations he had made previously go to waste. Not long after, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being, who was hiding tens of thousands of kilometers away and secretly observing the situation, flew to the Golden Crow tribe leader's side. Swoosh! Arriving in front of the Golden Crow tribe leader, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being silently sized up his expression. He hesitated for a moment before saying, Big brother, I'm sorry. In fact, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being also thought that Long Yen would kill the Golden Crow tribe leader. However, he did not expect that the two of them did not even fight. Long Yen only forced the Golden Crow tribe leader to make an oath and then turned and left. This was unexpected and had no choice but to bite the bullet and explain to the Golden Crow tribe leader and apologize. However, before he could finish, the Golden Crow tribe leader raised his hand to stop him. You don't have to explain. I understand. The Golden Crow tribe leader expressionlessly glanced at the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being before turning and leaving with a cold expression. He did not return to the Divine Tree Star, but instead flew in the direction of the Dragon Realm. Seeing him like this, the Blue Scorpion Supreme Being knew that he had left a gap in his heart and would remember this debt. The Blue Scorpion Supreme Being hurriedly chased after the Golden Crow tribe leader and explained, Big brother, things are not what you think. I would never harm you or leave you behind. The Golden Crow tribe leader had no intention of stopping and said indifferently, It has already happened. What else is there to say? You want to live and fight for the position of Domain Master of the Scorpion Galaxy. This is your choice. You are not wrong. I was wrong. I should not have trusted you so much and entrusted my life to you. The Blue Scorpion Supreme Being could no longer refute and could only change the topic. Big brother, it's fine even if you don't forgive me. However, you are still injured and cannot travel through the void right now. You should go to the Divine Tree Star to heal your injuries first. It won't be too late to return to the Dragon Realm after your injuries have healed. Chapter 3907. No matter how Blue Scorpion Supreme Being tried to explain or persuade him, he chased after the Golden Crow tribe leader for 1,000,000 miles, but he still could not obtain the Golden Crow tribe leader's forgiveness. In the end, the Golden Crow tribe leader left expressionlessly. He dragged his heavily injured body and disappeared into the depths of the void at a leisurely pace. Blue Scorpion Supreme Being remained where he was. He looked in the direction the Golden Crow tribe leader had left, his face filled with hatred and unwillingness. Damn it! 3,000 years of friendship ended just like that? Without the help of the Golden Crow tribe and the deterrence of a peak godly king, how will I compete for the position of Star Zone Master? Over the past 3,000 years, Blue Scorpion Supreme Being had been able to stand out in the Scorpion Star Zone and become one of the two overlords. His hard work and schemes were only part of the reason. More importantly, he had become friends with the Golden Crow tribe and the Golden Crow tribe leader, a peak godly king. But now his many years of hard work had gone down the drain. The Golden Crow tribe would no longer be his backer and help. If that powerful enemy knew about this, how could he continue to develop? They would definitely destroy him and the forces under him as quickly as possible. At this thought, Blue Scorpion Supreme Being was filled with hatred for Ji Tianqing and Long Yan. Damn bastards, it's all your fault. You could have killed the Golden Crow tribe leader, and I could have taken over the Golden Crow tribe and strengthened my forces. But you let him go and put me in a difficult situation. Hypocrites, you will die a horrible death. Blue Scorpion Supreme Being cursed angrily before his anger dissipated. He sighed heavily and flew to the divine tree star to deal with the aftermath. The burial of heaven sword sped through the void. 3 days later, it left the Scorpion Star Zone and headed straight for the Dragon Realm. Ji Tianqing and Long Yan stayed in the Sword World. One was recuperating while the other was cultivating in seclusion. Ji Tianqing did not have the chance to fight with the Golden Crow tribe leader on this trip to the Scorpion Star Zone. Nor did he test the true power of the burial of heaven. However, he did not feel that it was a pity. There would be plenty of opportunities in the future. After this trip to the Sky Scorpion Star area, his foundation of the God Tao had become much more solid. He had also gained some new insights. His cultivation base had reached the peak of the 8th King God realm. Everything was ready, and the conditions were ripe. Thus he entered the distorted spacetime to cultivate in seclusion, seizing the chance to break through to the 9th level of the God King realm. Long Yan stayed in the world inside the sword. He randomly found a place with abundant spiritual energy, and consumed a divine pill to heal himself. His injuries were rather serious. Although they did not endanger his life or his divine path foundation, it was not something that could be healed in a short period of time. According to his estimation, he would need to recuperate in the Divine Flame Grotto for at least 10 years before he could fully recover. The void was always dark and cold, and one could not feel the passage of time. Half a month passed quickly. The burial of heaven crossed the void and returned to the vicinity of the Dragon Realm. Stopping in the void, Ji Tianqing had already been in seclusion for 25 months in the distorted spacetime of the Divine Pagoda. In more than 2 years, he had broken through to the 9th level of the Divine King Realm 3 times. Unfortunately, his bottleneck was too stubborn. All 3 attempts ended in failure. Ji Tianqing could only stop his seclusion and fly out of the distorted spacetime and the world inside the sword. Swoosh! He appeared in the void, opened the world inside the sword, and awakened Long Yan. Long Yan left the world inside the sword and appeared in front of him. He looked at him with some confusion. Long Tian, why did you stop here? Aren't you coming back to the Dragon Realm with me to the Crimson Dragon continent? Ji Tianqing shook his head and smiled. The Luwu clan and the Golden Crow clan have been dealt with. As long as the 2 clan leaders are still alive, they will not do anything to you because of the Heavenly Law Oath. You can go back to the Divine Flame Grotto and recuperate in seclusion. I still need to go to the Crimson Dragon continent to continue my investigation and find Wuhan. Knowing that Ji Tianqing would not be returning to the Crimson Dragon continent, Long Yan looked regretful. We brothers have not seen each other for more than 1,000 years. Now that we have finally reunited, you are leaving? Forget it, I know you want to find your nephew as soon as possible, so I will not keep you. Once you find your nephew, we can have a good reunion in the future. Of course. Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile. Long Yan suddenly thought of something and exhorted, that's right, the situation in the Crimson Dragon continent is very stable. The Sacred Dragon Emperor is the strongest, and there has not been any trouble in the past 1,000 years. From what I know, the sacred dragon emperor had already gone to the outer domain a few hundred years ago to find an opportunity to break through to the god emperor level. I'm afraid you won't be able to see him in the sacred dragon continent this time. Ji Tianqing had already thought of this and explained, it's okay. Even if his real body is in the outer domain, he will definitely leave a clone in the sacred dragon continent. It will be the same if I go to his clone to find out more information. Alright. Long Yan nodded slightly. He was still a little worried and asked, that's right, you don't have much of a relationship with the sacred dragon emperor, right? Also, you don't seem to have been to the sacred dragon continent and are not familiar with the situation there. How about this, I will go with you. Ji Tianqing hurriedly waved his hand to dissuade him. No need. You should return to the divine fire grotto heaven and recuperate in peace. With my current abilities and methods, I can do whatever I want in the dragon realm without any danger. Moreover, the dragon realm is like my home. No matter which continent I go to, it will be like going home. Long Yan's eyes lit up and he hurriedly nodded in agreement. That's right. That's right. The dragon realm is your home. No matter how long you leave or where you go, as long as you return to the dragon realm, you will be home. Brother, you go to the sacred dragon continent first. I will go back to recuperate in seclusion. When my injuries are healed, I will contact you again. Then we will leave the dragon realm and travel the outer domain to find an opportunity to break through to the god emperor level and investigate the secrets of the 5 god emperors. Long Yan did not have much attachment to power. He only wanted to fulfill his responsibilities and protect the peace of the Crimson Dragon continent. He wanted to protect the billions of people who lived and worked in peace. Apart from that, his biggest dream and goal was to investigate the secrets of the 5 god emperors and find an opportunity to break through to the god emperor level. That was his final goal. Ji Tianqing also understood this point. He smiled and extended his fist, bumping it against Chu Li's fist. Alright, we have a promise. We will explore the mysteries together in the future. The 2 brothers bumped their fists, looked at each other and smiled. Then they bid each other farewell. Long Yan broke through the space barrier of the dragon realm and returned to the Crimson Dragon continent. Ji Tianqing controlled the burial of Heaven Sword and continued to fly through the void, rushing to the sacred dragon continent. 10 days after the 2 separated, Long Yan returned to the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven in the Crimson Dragon continent. After dealing with government affairs, he went into seclusion to recuperate. Ji Tianqing also broke through the space barrier of the dragon realm and stepped into the sacred dragon continent. At this time, the Golden Crow clan leader, who was seriously injured and weak, returned to the vicinity of the dragon realm. He also broke through the space barrier and returned to the Crimson Dragon continent. He returned to the grotto heaven in a very low-key manner and went into seclusion to recuperate. Of course, before he went into seclusion, he issued an order to the Golden Crow clan. From now on, they were to know their place and not attack the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 3908. It was just as Ji Tianqing had said. With the threat and restraint of the Heavenly Tao Oath, the Lu Wu and Golden Crows had completely settled down. The army of millions that they had gathered in the past year had completely collapsed and retreated in just a few days. All of his lofty words, passion, and fighting spirit had vanished into thin air. Even the Golden Crow and Lu Wu patriarchs were disheartened and had gone into seclusion to treat their wounds. They had left the affairs of their clans to the protectors and elders. The 2 patriarchs no longer had any ideas or fighting spirit for the future. They only had one request for their clansmen: to know their place and not provoke the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. Instead, they should stay in their caves and cultivate. This sudden turn of events plunged the Golden Crow and Lu Wu clans into chaos and debate. The clansmen of the 2 clans and their subordinate factions could not understand what was going on. They had clearly held the advantage and had gathered millions of soldiers. As long as they attacked, they could have defeated the Divine Fire Grotto Heaven. But before the battle had even begun, the 2 clans had given up and retreated. With such a strong start and weak finish, the contrast was huge. Many people were puzzled and it was difficult for them to calm down. The 2 patriarchs had gone into seclusion to treat their wounds. The protectors and elders knew the reason and the truth, but they could not explain it to their clansmen or their subordinate factions. That would be too humiliating. As time passed, the Luwu and Golden Crow clansmen began to complain. The subordinate factions of the two clans also felt indignant, humiliated, and resentful. The protectors, elders, and deacons could only watch the situation develop in a bad direction, but they could do nothing about it. Everyone knew that this was a bad start. In the next few hundred years, the subordinate factions of the two clans would definitely gradually break free from their control. In other words, the Golden Crow and Luwu clans would definitely weaken with each passing day. Whoosh! A pitch-black fissure suddenly appeared in the sky above the sacred dragon continent. With a flash of white light, a dragon youth wearing a white robe appeared high in the sky. He stood high in the sky, looking down at the sea of clouds and probing the surrounding mountains and rivers with his divine sense. His white robe and black hair danced in the wind. The fissure in the void behind him was also rapidly mending. The sacred dragon emperor lives in Yuanjua Cave, abode in Hidden Dragon Mountain. But where am I now? Where was Hidden Dragon Mountain? We need to find someone to ask about the situation and find out the route. With this thought flashing through his mind, Ji Tianqing flew past the sea of clouds at lightning speed and headed north. After traveling for less than 30,000 miles, he came across a city where the people of the monster clan gathered. It was a majestic city that had existed for thousands of years. More than 1 million demons lived in it. Although the city was protected by a divine array and tens of thousands of city guards, it was not difficult for him at all. With a little trick, he snuck into the city. His divine sense spread out and covered the entire city. Various voices from all directions entered his mind. After strolling around the city for a quarter of an hour, he understood the basic situation. This was the White Moon City of the Yong'an Empire in the Tianan region. The Tianan region was located in the southwest of the Holy Dragon continent. It was considered a rather remote place. Even so, a statue of the sacred dragon emperor was built in the city. The sacred dragon emperor's reputation was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people here. He was worshipped and revered by all the demons. It was a pity that Ji Tianqing found a few demons to ask about Hidden Dragon Mountain and Yuanjua's cave abode, but to no avail. Those citizens had only heard of this sacred ground, but did not know the direction or location. As a result, Ji Tianqing snuck into the city lord's residence and secretly restrained the city lord, who was a high-level divine lord. He found out the location of Hidden Dragon Mountain from him. Hidden Dragon Mountain is in the center of the continent. If you head northeast from here, you will reach it after passing through 20 regions. Senior, please spare my life. I have elders and children to take care of, and am usually very benevolent to the citizens. Apart from occasionally embezzling a little money, I have never committed any major mistakes. The city lord, who was completely restrained, sat stiffly on the wooden armchair. He could not do anything other than speak. Ji Tianqing stood behind him and asked in a low voice. However, he could not see Ji Tianqing's face. Of course, even if he could move freely, he would not dare to look. He could deeply feel the powerful aura of a divine king emanating from Ji Tianqing. He was just a mere divine lord. How could he dare to resist? In fact, he was even more afraid that Ji Tianqing would kill him after asking. That would be an unjust and worthless death. Fortunately, after Ji Tianqing got his answer, he left silently. That pitiful city lord did not notice anything as he sat on the chair with a pale face. He cried bitterly and begged for mercy for a long time before the restraints on his divine body gradually dissipated. When he regained his movement and divine power, he realized that the mysterious expert had already left. The city lord, who had luckily managed to keep his life, slumped on the wooden armchair. He panted for a long time before calming down. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he could only pretend to be calm and pretend that nothing had happened. Ji Tianqing controlled the Sword of Burial of Heaven and left White Lunar City a long time ago. The Sword of Burial of Heaven flew across the sea of clouds and headed northeast. Ji Tianqing was about to enter the distorted spacetime to continue breaking through to the 9th level of the Divine King realm. At this moment, a spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in his palm. Swoosh! After the spiritual light dissipated, A communication jade slip appeared. Ji Tianqing picked up the jade slip and looked at it. Immediately, his eyes bloomed with joy and excitement. It's a message from the old black dragon. I haven't heard from him for 3 years. Back then, he had asked the Black Dragon Emperor to help him find out about Wuhan. In the end, there was no news from the Black Dragon Emperor. Now that he had finally sent a communication jade slip, Ji Tianqing was naturally excited. He thought that there was good news. His divine sense entered the jade slip, and the Black Dragon Emperor's voice immediately sounded in his mind. Little brother, I haven't sent you a message for 2 years. You must be anxious, right? Tell me honestly, have you been whispering behind my back, thinking that I have forgotten about you? Hearing this, Ji Tianqing could not help but smile. He thought to himself, this old man knows me very well. The Black Dragon Emperor paused for a moment before continuing, however, you have received my communication jade slip, so don't be too happy. In these 2 years I have traveled all over the Black Dragon continent and the Sacred Dragon continent. I have visited several peak divine kings to help you find out about your son. It's a pity that they have not seen your son and do not know about this matter. So you don't have to search everywhere and ask them. Only the Sacred Dragon Emperor is left. I have not seen him. Now I am in outer space and on my way to the heavenly stalwart star territory. I am going to find the Sacred Dragon Emperor and ask him about this matter in person. You just stay in the dragon realm and wait for my news. After hearing the words in the communication jade slip, Ji Tianqing's eyes dimmed. He became increasingly worried and anxious. Now, besides the Sacred Dragon Emperor, all the peak divine kings in the dragon realm have already asked around, but there is still no trace of Wuhan. Wuhan, who took you away? Where are you now? Chapter 3909. When Ji Tianqing had just returned to the dragon realm, he had been full of hope that he would find Wuhan. But now, he had traversed the 4 continents and his hopes were dwindling. He even had a premonition that the Black Dragon Emperor would return empty-handed when he went to find the Sacred Dragon Emperor. After all, the Sacred Dragon Emperor had left the dragon realm a few hundred years ago and headed to the galaxy beyond. He definitely would not have had any interaction with Wuhan. Ji Tianqing's last ray of hope was quickly dissipating and turning into despair. If the peak godly king of the dragon realm did not save Wuhan, then only the divine world is left. Do I have to return to the divine world to continue my investigation? Ji Tianqing had already excluded the Sacred Dragon Emperor from his mind. He began to consider his next steps. Should he return to the divine world to continue his search for Wuhan? But on second thought, he felt that something was not right. The 5 strongest peak godly kings in the divine world have already become god emperors. They are not in the divine world. They are in the deepest part of the void, searching for vast amounts of cultivation resources and studying that foggy star. There are only a few peak godly kings left in the divine world. But if I cannot find Wuhan in the dragon realm, I can only return to the divine world and search the 5 continents. After making up his mind, he gathered his thoughts and sent a message to the Black Dragon Emperor to express his gratitude. Then he entered the distorted space-time and went into seclusion to break through to the 9th level of the Godly King realm. The Burial of Heaven did not stop flying and continued to rush towards Hidden Dragon Mountain. If it was someone else, they might have listened to the Black Dragon Emperor's advice and waited patiently somewhere for news. But he was not willing to wait for the Black Dragon Emperor to find the Sacred Dragon Emperor. Firstly, the galaxy beyond was too vast. It would be months before the Black Dragon Emperor found the Sacred Dragon Emperor. Secondly, he wanted to find his son and the Black Dragon Emperor was only helping him. How could he not be concerned and wait for someone else to help him find out the truth? The Burial of Heaven flew across the sky at lightning speed. It did not encounter any danger along the way and did not stop. Ji Tianqing stayed in the distorted space-time and started to break through with all his might. With the experience of his previous failures, he gradually grasped the essentials and understood the opportunity to break through. This time his breakthrough process was much smoother. Half a year had passed and he had not failed. He was still persevering and accumulating strength to break through the bottleneck. Unknowingly, after 7.5 days of traveling, the Burial of Heaven sword was about to reach the central region of the Holy Dragon continent. Ji Tianqing also officially went into seclusion for an entire year in the distorted spacetime. Finally, he had broken through the bottleneck and reached the 9th level of the Divine King realm. After the breakthrough, Ji Tianqing's divine power surged, and hundreds of divine patterns of laws circled around him. His aura changed slightly. His strength had also increased by 6 times, and his aura had become even more mysterious and reserved. In the past, he was as sharp as a divine sword, and his aura was sacred and dignified. But now, he was developing in the direction of returning to his original state, becoming more and more mysterious and low-key. This was probably the difference between his divine Tao and other divine kings. The surging divine power surged for 9 days and 9 nights before calming down. Ji Tianqing then went into seclusion to meditate for 3 months before ending his seclusion. When he came out of seclusion, the burial of Heaven Sword had also reached the central region of the Holy Dragon continent and entered the hidden Dragon Mountain Range. This vast mountain range was the head of the Holy Dragon continent's dragon veins. Divine power gathered within a radius of 500,000 miles. Countless spiritual beasts, divine beasts, and rare treasures were nurtured there. The hidden Dragon Mountain Range had also become a true sacred ground for cultivation and a treasure trove for adventurers. However, the adventurers who came from all over the place only moved around the outer regions. No one dared to enter the depths of the hidden Dragon Mountain Range to avoid disturbing the powerful figures in Yuanjue's cave abode and offending the sacred Dragon Emperor. But the burial of Heaven Sword did not have such concerns. It flew across the sky at lightning speed and reached the deepest part of the hidden Dragon Mountain Range. Tens of thousands of miles ahead, a brown mountain peak appeared. It was faintly discernible in the white sea of clouds. The mountain peak, which had a radius of tens of miles, was like a floating island that floated high in the sky and in the sea of clouds. There was a magnificent divine palace on the mountain peak. Under the scorching sun, it shone with a dazzling golden light. There was also a sky full of 5-colored divine light that formed a 5-colored rainbow that hung above the sea of clouds. Thousands of silver-armored guards were stationed around the majestic divine palace. They were led by more than 10 golden-armored divine kings. Although most of the divine kings were lower-level divine kings, and only 4 were middle-level divine kings. But such a solemn formation was not something that could be arranged by an ordinary power. The burial of heaven gradually slowed down and sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. "We have arrived. The entrance to Yuanjue's cave abode is in front." Ji Tianqing heard its voice transmission and left the distorted spacetime and flew out of the sword world. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing appeared above the sea of clouds. He kept the burial of Heaven Sword, stepped across the sea of clouds, and flew towards the mountain peak that was surrounded by divine light. The so-called Yuanjue's cave abode was actually a blessed grotto heaven. The entrance to the grotto heaven was in the divine palace on the mountain peak. Ji Tianqing descended from the sky and landed on the square outside the golden divine palace. Immediately, 4 golden-armored divine kings rushed over with a large group of silver-armored guards and surrounded him. Although the guards were wearing armor and holding swords, they were cautious as if they were facing a great enemy. But the 4 golden-armored divine kings did not show any hostility. They knew that the sacred Dragon Emperor had not shown himself for hundreds of years, much less had any feud with anyone. This young man from the dragon tribe who had suddenly come to visit probably had a request and was not here to seek revenge or cause trouble. "Young master, what can I do for you?" The leader of the golden-armored divine kings was at the 6th level of the divine king realm. He was the commander of the thousands of guards. He hesitated for a while before addressing Ji Tianqing as young master, and asked for the purpose of his visit with a serious expression. Although he could vaguely sense that Ji Tianqing's power was unfathomable. But Ji Tianqing looked too young, and he could not address him as a senior. Ji Tianqing looked around indifferently. His gaze swept across the guards and the golden-armored divine kings, and finally landed on the dazzling divine palace. "I have an important matter, and have specially come to the Yuanjue Grotto Heaven to visit the sacred Dragon Emperor. Please inform him." Seeing that Ji Tianqing had a dignified appearance and was well-spoken and mysterious, the 4 golden-armored divine kings heaved a sigh of relief. The commander cupped his fists and bowed. He asked again, "Young master, I am very sorry, But the Dragon Emperor is not in the Yuanjua Grotto heaven. Please return. Ji Tianqing had already expected this result. He said directly, even if the sacred Dragon Emperor's original body is not here, his avatar should be in the Grotto heaven. I am Long Tian, the new Dragon Emperor of the Star Source continent. I have an important matter to discuss with the sacred Dragon Emperor. Go and report it as it is. The 4 golden-armored god kings and the many silver-armored guards immediately stiffened when they heard Ji Tianqing announce his identity. They were filled with deep shock. The commander of the guards did not dare to delay any longer. He hurriedly bowed and said, "So it is the new Dragon Emperor. Please wait for a while. I will go and report it." Chapter 39:10. In the current dragon realm, the dragon tribe was the noblest of the noblest. No matter where Ji Tianqing went, he would be treated courteously. No one dared to offend him. Moreover, he was very powerful and had an extraordinary aura. The sacred Dragon Emperor was also very peaceful. He did not interfere in any conflicts and rarely offended anyone. The generals and god kings under his command were naturally influenced by him. They treated the guests rather politely. Ji Tianqing remained in the square to wait. The commander of the guards personally sent out a transmission jade letter to report the situation to the emperor's clone. The other 3 golden-armored god kings and the several hundred silver-armored guards all studied Ji Tianqing curiously as they discussed secretly through communication techniques. He is the new Dragon Emperor of the Stellar Source continent? Isn't he too young? 2 years ago, I heard that the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor Xuanji Grotto Heaven had been conquered. So it was him. As expected, the waves behind the Milky Way surpass the waves in front, and the waves in front are crushed to death on the riverbank. Although this new Dragon Emperor has an extraordinary aura and is mysterious and low profile, I don't think he is. Could he be an imposter? Are you crazy? Who would dare to impersonate another Dragon Emperor? Moreover, he is the new Dragon Emperor of the Stellar Source continent. That's right. Long Tian defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor and took control of the Stellar Source continent. He has a death feud with the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. You dare to impersonate Long Tian? Aren't you afraid of being killed by the old subordinates of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor? These guards and commanders guarded the hidden Dragon Mountain all year round and did not have the chance to go out. Therefore, they only heard a little about what had happened in the Stellar Source continent and did not know the details. At this moment, they were only quietly sizing up Ji Tianqing and discussing secretly. They did not have any other thoughts. After all, the change of power in the Stellar Source continent and the change of the Dragon Emperor had nothing to do with them. Ji Tianqing stood in the middle of the square with his hands behind his back and a calm expression. Of course, he knew that everyone was sizing him up and discussing him. But he didn't care and just waited expressionlessly. After a quarter of an hour or so, the Grand Commander of the Guards received a reply. After reading the message, he hurriedly smiled at Ji Tianqing and cupped his fists. Lord Dragon Emperor, His Majesty Dragon Emperor has agreed. Please follow me. After that, the Chief Commander personally led Ji Tianqing into the Golden Palace. There was a heavily guarded array inside the Divine Palace, which was the entrance to Yuanjua Paradise. The Grand Commander took out his identity jade token and personally cast a spell to activate the array and open the entrance. Shua! The two stepped into the formation and left the Divine Palace in a flash, entering the Yuanjua Paradise. In the past few years, Ji Tianqing had seen too many blessed paradises. To be honest, the blessed enclave in the Dragon Realm hardly gave him a sense of novelty. Even though Yuanjua Grotto Heaven was filled with god power, the mountains, rivers, and sceneries were unique. In the depths of the Grotto Heaven, there was a group of palaces built at the peak of the mountain range. But when he saw it, his reaction was dull. He didn't feel that it was novel or ingenious. Shua! Ji Tianqing followed the chief commander and flew for 45 minutes before landing at the peak of the mountain among the palaces. This group of palaces was very quiet. Nearly 100,000 demon experts and strong practitioners lived in more than 200 palaces. But besides the patrolling guards on duty, there was basically no one else. Most people were cultivating in seclusion in the various palaces. The entire group of palaces was filled with a peaceful, and leisurely atmosphere. Dragon Emperor, please come with me. The chief commander led the way. He led Ji Tianqing through a square and stepped into the majestic Sacred Dragon Divine Palace. This was the residence of the Sacred Dragon Emperor. It was also the place where he handled government affairs and gathered officials to discuss important matters. The palace had 6 floors and was 1,000 feet tall. It was very spacious. The first floor was the conference hall. It was dazzling, spacious, and bright. On both sides of the hall were the guest halls and the living quarters of the Dragon Emperor's personal guards. According to the common rules of the Dragon Realm, the chief commander led Ji Tianqing into the Divine Palace and settled him in the guest hall. After ordering the maids to serve tea and spirit fruits, the chief commander took his leave. Ji Tianqing sat in the guest hall and waited for a while. Then, a personal guard of the Dragon Emperor rushed over. After bowing to him, he led him to see the Sacred Dragon Emperor. Logically speaking, Ji Tianqing and the Sacred Dragon Emperor were only acquaintances and did not have much of a relationship. Under such circumstances, it was normal for the Sacred Dragon Emperor to receive him in the guest hall. If the two of them had a close relationship, the Sacred Dragon Emperor would most likely receive him in the study room. But Ji Tianqing did not expect the personal guard to lead him into a secret passage and to the door of a secret chamber. After bringing him in, the guard bowed and excused himself. Ji Tianqing looked at the quiet and empty passage, then looked at the stone door of the secret chamber, which was engraved with array patterns. He could not help but frown. What is the Sacred Dragon Emperor doing? Receiving me in the secret chamber? Just as this thought flashed across his mind, the stone door of the secret chamber opened. An elderly voice came from the secret chamber, which was filled with 5-colored divine light. Long Tian, my young friend, come in. This voice was not unfamiliar, but neither was it familiar. After all, Long Tian had only met the Sacred Dragon Emperor a few times. Ji Tianqing stepped into the secret chamber, passed through the cloud-like 5-colored divine light, and came to the center of the secret chamber. There were many bookshelves and shelves in the secret chamber. They were filled with elixirs, materials for weapon refinement, and various ancient books. At the head of the table, there was a wide jade table and a purple jade throne. A benevolent elder with white hair and beard, dressed in a white dragon robe, was sitting on the throne, smiling at him. There were also a few jade scrolls on the jade table, as well as more than 10 ancient books. Ji Tianqing sized up the furnishings in the secret chamber, then looked at the white-haired elder. He naturally knew that the white-haired elder was the Sacred Dragon Emperor's clone. Seeing that the Sacred Dragon Emperor's clone was normal and smiling, Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bowed. Ji Tianqing pays his respects to Senior Sacred Dragon Emperor. The Sacred Dragon Emperor was of the same generation as his master, the Heavenly Dragon Emperor. It was natural for him to greet him as a junior. The Sacred Dragon Emperor nodded slightly. After looking at him for a while, he smiled and said, "You look alike. You are indeed 70% alike." Hearing this sentence, Ji Tianqing frowned and asked doubtfully, "Senior Sacred Dragon, you are?" The Sacred Dragon Emperor waved his hand and quickly changed the topic. 2 years ago, I heard that you caused a huge commotion in the Star Source continent and took over the position of the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor. At that time, I thought that I would be able to see you very soon. You have left the Dragon Realm for more than 1,000 years. Now that you have returned to the Dragon Realm, reached the peak of the Divine King Realm, and took over the position of the Dragon Emperor, you should be able to comfort your master's spirit in heaven. Ji Tianqing nodded. After exchanging some pleasantries with the Sacred Dragon Emperor, he went straight to the point. "Senior Shenglong, to tell you the truth, I came to visit you this time because I want to ask you about something. 18 years ago." Before he could say how Wuhan was rescued, the Sacred Dragon Emperor asked with a smile, "Long Tian, I also want to ask you about something. Do you want Wuhan to have the surname Ji? Or Long?" Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 39:11. The Emperor's words stunned Ji Tianqing. He had not expected the Emperor to ask such a question. Before he could say that Wuhan had been rescued, the Emperor had already mentioned Wuhan's name. He immediately understood what this meant. Before coming to Yuanjua Grotto Heaven, he had not harbored much hope. He had not expected the emperor to give him such a huge surprise. Senior Sacred Dragon, you mean, you have seen my son Wuhan? You were the one who saved him? Ji Tianqing was filled with surprise and disbelief as he asked agitatedly. The Sacred Dragon Emperor nodded with a smile. Seeing that he had admitted it, Ji Tianqing was filled with endless surprise and relief. All these years of hard work and preparation had not been in vain. Heaven did not let down those who worked hard. He had finally found Wuhan. Senior Sacred Dragon, thank you for saving my son Wuhan. Long Tian will remember your kindness for life. Although Ji Tianqing was very surprised and agitated, he did not lose his composure. He hurriedly bowed to the emperor to express his gratitude. The Sacred Dragon Emperor smiled and said, in the past few years, as Wuhan gradually grew into a young man, I increasingly felt that his appearance and eyes were somewhat familiar. I thought hard for a long time before I remembered that he looked very similar to you. At least 70% similar. But I still did not understand why his surname was Ji and not Long. Also, when you left the Dragon Realm more than 1,000 years ago, didn't you go to the Divine Realm? How did your son appear in the lower realm? After hearing the Sacred Dragon Emperor's words, Ji Tianqing finally understood why the Sacred Dragon Emperor had said, similar, when they first met. Indeed 70% similar. However, Ji Tianqing did not know how to answer the Emperor's question. If it was Ophiuchus or Long Yan who asked these questions, he might not hide it. But he did not have such a close relationship with the Emperor. He was hesitating whether to tell the truth. After deliberating for a moment, Ji Tianqing decided to change the topic. Senior Sacred Dragon, where is Wuhan now? Is he in Yuanjua Paradise? The Sacred Dragon Emperor raised his brows and said with a teasing smile, he is not in the Grotto Heaven. He has always been in outer space and has not come to the Dragon Realm. Looks like you don't intend to answer this old man's question? Fine, this must be your secret. When you are willing to answer, this old man will ask you again. Although Ji Tianqing did not answer, the Sacred Dragon Emperor had lived for more than 20,000 years and was very meticulous. He had already guessed some things. However, since Ji Tianqing was unwilling to tell him, he could not force him. Ji Tianqing also felt a little strange, so he asked, Senior Shenglong, have you ever asked Wuhan these questions? The Sacred Dragon Emperor smiled and said somewhat helplessly, I still can't figure it out, so I asked Wuhan indirectly. Unfortunately, this kid is just like you when you were young. Always silent and cold. I tried to ask him a few times, but he pretended not to know. After all, he is a junior and my last disciple. Since he is unwilling to answer, I will not force him, so I can only ask you. Senior, you actually accepted Wuhan as your last disciple? Ji Tianqing was instantly shocked and his expression became a little strange. It was not anger or unhappiness, but he did not expect the Sacred Dragon Emperor to accept Wuhan as his disciple. One must know that the Sacred Dragon Emperor had followed the example of Fengtian Dragon Emperor and never married or had any children. In the previous 20,000 years, he did not even have a single disciple. And now, he had accepted Wuhan as his last disciple. The so-called last disciple meant that he would close the door and not accept any more disciples. How could Ji Tianqing not be surprised? The Sacred Dragon Emperor looked at him with a smile and stroked his beard. Long Tian, I saved Wuhan's life. I saw that he had outstanding talent and was 1 in a billion, so I wanted to cherish him. Although I did not discuss this with you, I am your senior and am on good terms with your master. Now that I am informing you, you won't blame me for acting on my own, right? You look as if you have me in the bag. Even if I object, it is useless, right? Ji Tianqing muttered in his heart. But he definitely could not say that openly. He cupped his hands and said, Senior, you are highly respected and also the most senior Dragon Emperor in the Dragon Realm. It is Wuhan's honor that you are willing to accept him as your disciple. I've troubled Senior to take care of and teach Wuhan for more than 10 years. Thank you, Senior. The Sacred Dragon Emperor smiled and waved his hand. Don't be so polite. We are all family. This is what I should do as his master. Ji Tianqing was concerned about Wuhan's situation and asked again, Senior Sacred Dragon, how is Wuhan now? Where has he been living and cultivating all these years? The sacred dragon emperor waved his hand and shot out a ray of divine light. He took out a chair and placed it in front of Ji Tianqing. This is a long story. Sit down and we can talk slowly. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement. They sat opposite each other at the jade table and chatted as they drank tea. The sacred dragon emperor looked as if he was reminiscing. He said slowly, "Ever since your master, Dragon Emperor Feng Tian, disappeared, the most respected powerful person in the dragon realm is gone. I am not afraid to tell you this. He was our senior and backbone. Without our backbone, I, the Black Dragon Emperor, the Red Dragon Emperor, and the rest felt uneasy. Moreover, your master left behind some clues before he disappeared, which made us feel very strange. We discussed it countless times and finally came to a conclusion. The dragon realm was punished by the heavens and dozens of races became sinners. No matter how much they cultivated, the powerful people in the dragon realm could not break through the divine king realm and reach a higher realm. So more than 800 years ago, my real body left the dragon realm and went to outer space. I operated in the heavenly lead star domain for more than 200 years and successfully controlled it as the master behind the scenes. Although the cultivation resources and environment in outer space are slightly inferior to those in the dragon realm, but in outer space there is a higher chance of surpassing the divine king realm. So my real body remained in the heavenly lead star domain, and only left an avatar here to guard the Yuanjua Grotto heaven. Ji Tianqing had thought that the sacred dragon emperor would start his story from 18 years ago. But he did not expect the sacred dragon emperor to start from 1,000 years ago, when Dragon Emperor Feng Tian disappeared. Even though he already knew about the sinners and the heavenly punishment. But the sacred dragon emperor was in high spirits and he could only listen patiently. The sacred dragon emperor raised his teacup and took a sip before continuing his story. I was the first to leave the dragon world and occupy an extraterrestrial galaxy. After I took control of the heavenly lead star domain, the other dragon emperors also entered outer space and tried to establish their power. 500 years ago, a fellow who called himself the Netherworld Emperor led a large group of divine kings and divine lords into the heavenly lion star domain. The heavenly lion star domain is right next to my heavenly lead star domain. The two star domains are only 3 billion miles apart. Book guest residence reading website. Chapter 39:12. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows when he heard the words Netherworld Emperor and Heavenly Lion Galaxy. He seemed to have guessed something. However, he did not interrupt the sacred dragon emperor and listened patiently. The sacred dragon emperor looked angry as he recounted. The Netherworld Emperor was impatient and irritable. The moment he entered the Heavenly Lion Galaxy, he started a massacre and forcefully occupied various worlds. It only took him 20 years to control the Heavenly Lion Galaxy with iron and blood. Then he enslaved the natives of the Heavenly Lion Galaxy and forced everyone to mine for cultivation resources. He plundered resources and treasures without restraint. Although I am ashamed of his actions, that was the Heavenly Lion Galaxy. However, that was the Heavenly Lion Star region's matter. I had never thought of snatching your territory, so I did not intervene. However, even though I did not stir up trouble, that bastard took the initiative. Not long after he occupied the Heavenly Lion Galaxy, he led a group of godly kings into the Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy in a futile attempt to snatch territory. I had long seen his ambition and had always been wary of him. Therefore, before he entered the Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy, I had already set up a large number of troops and ambushes. That battle lasted for 3 years and destroyed dozens of planets in several worlds. Although this old man is not the Netherworld Emperor's opponent, the God Kings under his command have been slaughtered by the soldiers under this old man's command. The Netherworld Emperor lost miserably in that battle, and lost nearly 100 godly kings. He could only retreat pathetically to the Heavenly Lion Galaxy. Haha. This is the difference between winning the hearts of the people and not. Although I occupied the Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy, I never bullied the people and was very generous to my soldiers. For hundreds of years, I have been trying to maintain the peace of the Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy and imparting the way of cultivation. The entire Heavenly Stalwarts Galaxy respected me and obeyed my orders. The soldiers also fought bravely. However, the Netherworld Emperor was cruel and ruthless. He destroyed the Heavenly Lion Galaxy until it was unbearable to look at. Even the soldiers under his command held grudges against him. They obeyed him in public but opposed him in private. It would be strange if he did not lose. Although the Sacred Dragon Emperor did not talk about that battle in detail, he was still full of satisfaction and pride. Ji Tianqing said calmly, "That Netherworld Great Emperor should be the god of the underworld, right?" When he invaded Tian Kuei Star Zone, he had already broken through the God King realm and reached the God Emperor realm. The Sacred Dragon Emperor looked at him in surprise and asked, "I haven't even finished speaking. How did you know? Do you know the god of the underworld?" Ji Tianqing sneered. "Not only do I know him." The Sacred Dragon Emperor suddenly thought of something and was enlightened. "I understand now. You have a feud with the god of the underworld. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken action to capture Wuhan, and even tried to bring her back to the divine world. It was obvious that the upper realm powerhouse who opened the passage between the two worlds, saved the Heaven Punisher clan, and captured Ji Wuhan was the projection of the god of the underworld's clone. Ji Tianqing had already guessed this earlier, so he wasn't surprised at all. The Sacred Dragon Emperor continued, "Since that battle more than 400 years ago, I have formed a feud with the god of the underworld. Since then, I've been keeping an eye on him and investigating his background. Later on, I found out that he came from the divine world and had broken through the God King realm to reach the so-called God Emperor realm. While I was hiding in Tian Kuei Star Zone to recuperate, I also kept an eye on the god of the underworld's movements to prevent him from making a comeback. But later on, I found out that he seemed to have something more important to do. He did not stay in Tian Lion Star Zone and left with a group of God Kings and Sir Gods. I don't know where he went. I sent many spies to infiltrate Tian Lion Star Zone to secretly investigate the god of the underworld's secrets. 300 years ago, I found out a shocking secret. Not only the god of the underworld, there were 4 other peak god kings in the divine world who had also broken through to the God Emperor realm. To be honest, I did not feel good about it and felt that it was very unfair. Our dragon realm did not even have a single god emperor, but there were 5 in the divine world. Moreover, those 5 god emperors were all in outer space, each occupying a star zone. More than 200 years ago, I personally killed one of the god of the underworld's trusted aides. He was a 9th-stage god king who stayed in Tian Lion Star Zone as the deputy region lord to manage affairs on behalf of the god of the underworld. It was only after I refined the memories of that divine king's divine soul that I found out that the Netherworld Divine Emperor was doing something unimaginable. At this point, the Sacred Dragon Emperor deliberately paused to whet Ji Tianqing's appetite. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianqing replied without hesitation. The god of the underworld not only controlled the Reincarnation Island in the divine world and occupied Tian Lion Star Zone, but also extended his hand to the lower realm. He secretly supported the Heaven Punisher clan in the lower realm, and used the God Emperor's method to interfere with the Heavenly Tao's will, and avoid the heavenly tribulation for the Heaven Punisher clan. The Heaven Punisher clan dominated the lower realm, and had the intention of sweeping through all 3,000 worlds. The Sacred Dragon Emperor was even more surprised. He looked at Ji Tianqing with bright eyes and said in a complicated tone, "You brat, how do you know everything? This old man wanted to keep you in suspense. How boring." Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, "Continue. After you finish, I will answer your previous question." "That's more like it." The Sacred Dragon Emperor gave a satisfied smile and continued, "When I found out about this secret, I was very surprised and puzzled. I could not understand. That guy had already become the God Emperor and could use the power of the Heavenly Tao. Why was he still thinking about the lower realm? There were only mortals in the lower realm. There were no people or treasures that could tempt him. But I later found out that he supported the Heaven Punisher clan in the lower realm, because he wanted to find something. It seemed like he wanted to find a treasure map. I guess it was something like a treasure map. After understanding all this, I felt that this was not a simple matter. A treasure map that the god of the underworld spent so much effort on was definitely a divine Tao treasure. So I also started to pay attention to the lower realm's movements and kept an eye on the god of the underworld's movements. From then on, the god of the underworld did not appear for more than 200 years. I did not know what he was up to. Until 18 years ago, I suddenly discovered that the god of the underworld had returned to Tian Lion Star Zone. Moreover, he had built a sacrificial altar and used sorcery to interfere with the heavenly Tao's will and forcefully open the passage between the two realms. He had actually sent a clone to the lower realm through the passage between the two realms. At that time, I knew that something big must have happened in the lower realm. I have a grudge against the god of the underworld. Whatever he wants to do, I will definitely stop him. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing gave a gratified smile. He continued, so you also spent a huge amount of resources to build a sacrificial altar, and gathered the power of many godly kings to forcefully open the passage between the two realms. However, you opened the passage a little late. By the time you opened the passage, the matter in the lower realm had already ended. At that time, the clone projection of the god of the underworld was preparing to return to the upper realm with Wuhan and a youth from the Heaven Punisher clan. So you acted decisively and injured the clone projection of the god of the underworld and saved Wuhan Senior Sacred Dragon. Am I right? Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 39:13. Now that the truth was out, everything made sense. 18 years ago, Ji Tianqing did not know who the clone projection was, nor did he know who the powerful figure who had saved Wuhan was. Now the Emperor's recount of the past made Ji Tianqing understand everything. The Sacred Dragon Emperor stared deeply at Ji Tianqing and said meaningfully, "You know so much. Could it be that you were also there?" Ji Tianqing smiled but did not explain. Continue. The Emperor rolled his eyes and stroked his white beard. I am only a king of gods and do not have the means like the god of the underworld to send a clone projection down to the lower realm. However, I can think of a way to open the passage between the two realms. Although my clone cannot descend to the lower realm, I can cast spells from a distance and injure the clone projection of the god of the underworld. After all, his clone projection descending to the lower realm is defying the will of the heavenly Tao and his power will be limited. I will destroy what he wants to do. I will also take back what he wants to take away. Although I did not descend to the lower realm at that time and did not know what happened there, nor did I know Wuhan. But I am very glad that I made the decision back then. At this point, the Emperor once again showed a proud and smug expression. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and said in a complicated tone, "Yes. Fortunately you saved Wuhan. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The god of the underworld is very cruel and vicious. He brought Wuhan to the upper realm and most likely refined her into a puppet, then let her fight with me and my father. After all, the god of the underworld hates me to the core. Killing me may not be enough to appease his hatred." The Emperor's eyes brightened and he asked expectantly, "I did not guess wrongly. You really have a deep grudge against the god of the underworld. Tell me quickly what exactly is going on. You must not have been in the heavenly realm for the past 1,000 years. You ran to the lower realm, right?" Given the Emperor's intelligence, after suspecting Ji Wuhan's identity, he would definitely make many guesses and associations. However, he could not be sure until he met Ji Tianqing. Now that the answer was about to be revealed, he couldn't wait any longer. Ji Tianqing could tell that the Sacred Dragon Emperor's personality was still the same as before. He was gentle and kind and a little talkative. He also sincerely loved and valued Wu Hen. Since that was the case, Ji Tianqing decided not to hide the truth from the Emperor. After all, he already had peak Divine King strength. Soon he might have to face the 5 God Emperors. At that time, even if he didn't say anything, the truth would be exposed. Since that was the case, it was better to inform everyone as soon as possible. The so-called everyone was not only the Sacred Dragon Emperor, but also the Red Dragon Emperor, the Black Dragon Emperor, and the Ophiuchus. These 4 peak divine kings were Ji Tianqing's relatives and friends in the Dragon Realm, and they would also be of help to his future revenge. There was no need to hide it from his family and friends. Ji Tianqing was silent for a moment before he looked up at the Emperor. Under his expectant gaze, he said slowly, "Senior Sacred Dragon, actually you have already guessed it. That's right, 18 years ago I was indeed in the lower realm. When the god of the underworld's clone descended, I was destroying the Heaven Punisher clan." "It is indeed related to you." The Emperor's eyes flashed and he said earnestly, "Perhaps this is fate's arrangement. After a long sigh, he asked again, "That's right, since you are already a peak divine king, how could you stay in the lower realm for such a long time? If you are a peak divine king, then you can easily kill the god of the underworld's clone, and Wu Hen would not have been taken away. What exactly happened? Tell me in detail like how I told you just now. Do you think everyone is as long-winded as you?" Ji Tianqing thought to himself. However, he was not in a hurry to do anything and was not afraid of delaying this. For Wu Hen's sake, he gave the god of the underworld a rough explanation. "Back then I was a fourth-stage divine king, and left the dragon realm to cultivate in the divine world. 1,100 years ago, I was a peak divine king, and was known as Kenshin in the divine world. Because of the divine Tao treasure, the 5 peak divine kings used all their strength and led more than 10,000 divine kings and divine lords to besiege me. I led my friends and soldiers in a counterattack and fought with the 5 peak divine kings in the void beyond the heavens. In the end I died. Fortunately, I knew the secrets of the heavens and disrupted the rules of the heavenly Tao in advance. After I died, a trace of my soul was not destroyed and reincarnated into the mortal realm. 100 years ago, I reincarnated and cultivated again. I grew up step by step in the mortal realm and returned to the divine world 18 years ago. I wanted to return to the divine world to cultivate and recover my peak divine king level, before seeking revenge on the 5 divine kings. Unexpectedly, they broke through the shackles and reached the god of the underworld. My identity was exposed in the divine world, and I was besieged by the 5 god of the underworld. I had no choice but to return to the dragon realm." Ji Tianqing gave a simple explanation of what had happened. After that, he looked at the sacred dragon emperor calmly. The sacred dragon emperor was shocked and in disbelief. His eyes shone with a complicated light. After a long while he sighed deeply and said, "Although I had guessed that things were not simple, I did not expect it to be so complicated. You are the only disciple of the heaven-sealing dragon emperor. Back then, I felt that you were extremely talented and would definitely become a peak divine king. I did not expect you to become a peak divine king 1,000 years ago. After that, so many things happened. I already feel pressured to have a feud with the god of the underworld. But you are even more valiant and have a death feud with the 5 god of the underworld. In my opinion, even if you are a peak divine king now, you have no chance of revenge. You should go to the outer realm to cultivate and become a god of the underworld as soon as possible." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He said, "Thank you for your concern, senior. I have my own plans. I have waited for more than 1,000 years. I am not in a hurry." "That's right, senior, you have been cultivating in the Tiankue star domain for hundreds of years. Do you have any signs of breaking through to the god of the underworld? If you can break through to the god of the underworld first, you will definitely restore confidence in the dragon realm and let the other dragon emperors see hope." The sacred dragon emperor pursed his lips and said helplessly, "I am already old. Whether I can break through to the god of the underworld is really up to fate. But you, kid, are terrifyingly talented. I am sure that you will be the first to become a god of the underworld." "Senior, you flatter me." Ji Tianqing only smiled and did not say anything else. He knew his own situation best. He wondered if the sacred dragon emperor would still be so confident if he knew that he was only a 9th-tier divine king, and not a peak divine king. At this moment, the sacred dragon emperor said earnestly, "Long Tian, the fact that you reincarnated is somewhat unbelievable. If word gets out, it will shock the world. Also, it will attract the attention of the 5 god of the underworld. This is very dangerous. So, I will help you keep it a secret. You should also be careful." Ji Tianqing's heart warmed slightly. He nodded and said, "Thank you, senior. Oh yes, I have a question that I wanted to ask earlier. You are my senior and Wu Hen is your disciple. We should still address each other separately. Otherwise, our seniority will be messed up." Chapter 39:14. Of course, this was just a joke with a hint of mockery. The emperor knew that Ji Tianqing was not using this as an excuse to express his displeasure. He was just reminding him. Therefore, he smiled and nodded. "Don't worry. I have already thought about this problem. I will not make you feel awkward." In fact, Ji Tianqing was not unhappy that Wu Hen could become the emperor's disciple. If Wu Han did not become his disciple, he would have taught him personally. Wu Han's life was full of twists and turns. Since she was saved by the emperor, it was not a big deal for her to become his disciple. Anyway, the emperor's experience and ability made him worthy of being Wu Han's master. In this way, the relationship between the sacred dragon emperor and Ji Tianqing could be improved. In the future, if Ji Tianqing wanted to deal with the 5 god emperors, he would have to borrow the power of the emperor, the black dragon emperor, and the others. Now that they had finished discussing the important matters, Ji Tianqing's heart was finally relieved, and he no longer worried about Wu Han. Since the emperor asked him to stay, Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry to leave. He stayed in the secret chamber and continued chatting with the emperor, asking about Wu Han's current situation in the heavenly leader's star domain. At the mention of Wu Han, the emperor's face was full of pride and gratification. As he recounted the events that had happened over 10 years ago, he spoke tirelessly and without stopping. Although Wu Han is still young, she is very mature and steady. She is exactly the same as you were back then. He usually stays in my divine palace and spends most of his time cultivating the divine Tao and comprehending the various remarkable powers that I have taught him. In the past 10 years, the number of times he left the divine palace can be counted on one hand. This old man remembers that the longest time he went into seclusion was a full 7 years. After he finished his seclusion, he broke through from the 7th level of the heavenly god realm to the divine lord realm. To be honest, he reached the divine lord realm at the mere age of 20. He is definitely the youngest divine lord in history. This is also an eye-opener for me. I really don't know how you got such good fortune to have such a demonic son. The emperor looked at Ji Tianqing, his eyes and tone full of admiration. But there was no envy, much less jealousy. After all, Wu Han had already become his last disciple. Ji Tianqing thought about it seriously. He had cultivated in the mortal world for dozens of years. After he ascended to the deity world, he had cultivated for several years before he recovered to the divine lord realm. Back then, he had become a divine lord in his 80s. He was already the youngest divine lord. But a few years later, his daughter Ji Wushuang also broke through to the divine lord realm, breaking his record. Only now did he know that actually, the one who broke through to the divine lord realm the fastest was still hatred. Thinking about this, Ji Tianqing was filled with gratification and pride. He thought to himself, after all, he's the child of Yun Yao and I. He was born a god. How can ordinary people compare to him? At this point, the sacred dragon emperor spoke again. Besides Wu Han, I have also taken in a female disciple. She is a descendant of a Qilin that I found when I was traveling through outer space. It is very likely that she is the last Qilin bloodline left in this world. Back then, when she was still young, I named her Qilinger and brought her back to Tiankue Starfield. Although she entered the sect earlier than Wu Han and should be his senior sister, she is still a Qilin. Her lifespan is too long and her growth is too slow. Today, Wu Han is already a handsome young man, while Qilinger is still a little girl. So, I made Wu Han the senior brother and Qilinger the junior sister. Oh, there is such an interesting story. Ji Tianqing was intrigued and said with emotion, since ancient times the dragons, phoenixes and Qilins have all become sinners and suffered the wrath of the heavens. There are many dragon bloodlines and they can still survive to this day and control the dragon realm. But the phoenixes and Qilins have very few bloodlines to begin with. Now they are even more rare. It is also a great opportunity for you to find a Qilin bloodline. It is also good karma for you to take her in as your disciple and guide her carefully. The sacred dragon emperor nodded in agreement and sighed. Since ancient times, the dragon realm has suffered the wrath of the heavens and many races have become sinners. It is difficult for them to reproduce in the dragon realm, and they are withering away. They have all moved to outer space. But now that 30,000 years have passed, most of the races have gradually disappeared. The dragon clan and the dozens of sinners in the dragon realm can only continue to search for ways to survive. Otherwise, I am worried that in another few tens of thousands of years, these sinners will all disappear. Ji Tianqing hurriedly comforted him. Senior, don't worry. There will definitely be a solution to let the races continue to survive. The two of them were silent for a while. The sacred dragon emperor hesitated for a moment before asking, Long Tian 1,000 years ago, the 5 god emperors tried to kill you to steal your treasure. After that, the god of the underworld secretly supported the Heaven Punisher tribe to search for some treasure map in the lower realm. The treasure map he is looking for is the treasure you obtained that year, right? This was one of Ji Tianqing's greatest secrets. He did not want to reveal it. But the Sacred Dragon Emperor was very smart and had already guessed some secrets. He wanted to build a good relationship with the Sacred Dragon Emperor, so that they could form an alliance in the future and use him as a helper. He could not lie and hide anymore. The prerequisite for building a good relationship was to treat each other with sincerity and mutual trust. At this thought, Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "You guessed correctly." The Sacred Dragon Emperor's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. He lowered his voice and asked, "In that case, the treasure map in your hands can help you to break through to the God Emperor realm?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said regretfully, "I can't be sure about that. I have not tried it yet." This was the truth. He had not reached the peak of the God King realm. The Sacred Dragon Emperor frowned and thought for a while. He asked again, "Since the treasure map is still in your hands and the 5 God Emperors have not obtained it, how did they break through to the God Emperor realm?" Not only did one break through to the God Emperor realm, but all 5 of them became God Emperors. Did they obtain an even more powerful treasure? Since the Sacred Dragon Emperor was already thinking about these questions, Ji Tianqing could not hide anything. Otherwise, he would not be able to explain himself clearly. To avoid any misunderstandings, he took the initiative to explain. "Senior, to be honest, we found 2 sets of treasures that year. The first half was called the Eternal Heavenly Book and was obtained by the 5 God Emperors. I suspect that they used that heavenly book to break through to the God Emperor realm. And the second half of the treasure was an array map. The original item was destroyed long ago. I only memorized all the contents of the array map." In fact, Ji Tianqing's frank and honest explanation of the truth was only 9 truths and 1 lie. The original item of the heaven-destroying array map had not been destroyed. It had always been with him. The so-called Kenshin's tomb was actually formed by the heaven-destroying array map. That year, it was the heaven-destroying array map that protected a wisp of his soul and allowed him to survive in the face of certain death. That was how he was able to reincarnate. But the Sacred Dragon Emperor was already filled with emotion when he heard Ji Tianqing tell the truth. "I see. After hearing what you said, I finally understood the crux of the matter. No wonder there were 5 God Emperors in the divine realm. No wonder the god of the underworld secretly supported the heaven-destroying tribe to search for the treasure map in the lower realm. I'm afraid the god of the underworld also guessed that you did not die and reincarnate to the lower realm." Chapter 39:15. Long Tian, I am very grateful that you are willing to reveal these secrets. At least, I have seen the hope of breaking through to the God Emperor realm and have also understood the truth. Don't worry, not only will I help you keep these secrets, I will also guide Wuhan with all my heart, so that he will surpass his teacher. The Sacred Dragon Emperor was not a fool. Of course, he knew that Ji Tianqing had told him these secrets because he saw him as a trusted friend. He was touched and grateful and made up his mind. He said solemnly, "The blood feud between you and the 5 God Emperors is almost impossible to resolve. One day when you break through to the God Emperor realm, you will definitely take revenge on them. Don't worry, I will also do my best to help you, especially the god of the underworld. I will take his life with my own hands and take revenge." The emperor gritted his teeth at the mention of the god of the underworld. His hatred ran deep. Ji Tianqing guessed that the emperor must have been severely injured after being defeated by the god of the underworld. The heavenly stalwart's domain must have suffered a terrible loss and damage. Otherwise, given the emperor's amiable personality, he would never hate the god of the underworld so much. He got up and bowed to the emperor. He said sincerely, "Thank you for your help, senior. But this matter cannot be rushed. We still need to plan slowly. Don't worry, when I verify that the Heaven Punishment Formation map can help me break through to the God Emperor realm, I will not keep it to myself. At that time I will help you, the Black Dragon Emperor, and the Red Dragon Emperor all break through to the God Emperor realm. There are 5 god emperors in the divine world. They are scheming something big, and the dragon realm cannot fall behind. We must also give birth to a few god emperors in order to compete with them. Everyone knew that if anyone possessed a divine Tao supreme treasure, they would definitely conceal it. They would never share it with anyone other than their closest relatives. But Ji Tianqing had promised the emperor that if the heaven punishment formation map could help people break through to the god emperor realm, he would definitely share it. What kind of courage and magnanimity was this? The sacred dragon emperor also stood up and bowed to Ji Tianqing. He said in a solemn tone, Long Tian, I am extremely impressed by your magnanimity and can't thank you enough. If this matter succeeds, you will be the savior of the dragon realm. I also promise you that whether that formation map can help us break through to the god emperor realm or not, I will always be your support and support. After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands and bowed in the direction of the extraterritorial void. With a gratified expression, he lamented, Senior Sky Dragon, do you see this? This is your last disciple. Your choice back then was not wrong, and your prophecy is about to come true. You are right. Only Long Tian can save the dragon realm. He has already grown up and has the same breadth of mind and boldness as you. He can take on great responsibilities. The sacred dragon emperor's tone was rather agitated, and he was in an extremely good mood. What exactly is going on? Ever since he returned to the dragon realm and learned that his master had gone missing, he had felt that it was very strange. His master was the most powerful person in the dragon realm and the most respected senior. How could he have died for no reason? There must be some secret behind this. It was just that he had not found out. Now, after hearing the emperor's strange words, he was even more certain that there was a problem. His master must have said something to the emperor before he went missing. Unexpectedly, the emperor was taken aback and did not answer Ji Tianqing. He was distracted for a moment before he smiled and said, Don't be anxious. The Black Dragon Emperor is here. Let him tell you. With that, he took out a mysterious transparent crystal and placed it on the jade table in front of him. This crystal was a special magical weapon. It seemed to have the effect of transmitting sound and projection. As the emperor cast his spell and injected his divine power into the crystal, it immediately lit up with a dazzling white light and formed a light screen in midair. Ji Tianqing stared at the light screen. After the light screen calmed down, an image appeared. In the image there was a study in a palace. In the spacious and elegant study, the emperor's original body sat on the main seat. Behind him was a tall bookcase. In front of him sat a middle-aged man in a black robe. He was so handsome that he looked devilishly unruly. He did not look like a dragon emperor at all. Ji Tianqing recognized him immediately. The man in the black robe was the Black Dragon Emperor. This image is the heavenly lead star domain. The Black Dragon Emperor has already met the emperor. Ji Tianqing suddenly realized. Before he could speak, the Black Dragon Emperor in the image waved at him and greeted him with a smile. Little brother, you didn't expect me to reach the heavenly lead star domain so quickly, right? I wanted to give you a surprise, but you still went to the sacred dragon continent and found the emperor's clone. Since you already know your son's whereabouts, I have completed my task. I know you are very excited and want to thank me in person, but there is no use in thanking me verbally. You don't have to give me those empty words. Just treat me to a few more drinks in the future. The Black Dragon Emperor sat on a spacious jade chair. As he chewed on dried fruits and drank divine tea, he chatted with Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not know whether to laugh or cry. He frowned and asked, Old Black Dragon, you already have a harem of 3,000 beauties. Why are you still thinking about drinking wine? The Black Dragon Emperor flicked his fringe that covered half his face and rolled his eyes at him. He said disdainfully, What do you know? Aren't the dragons a sinful race with withered bloodlines? I am worried about the future of the dragon race. I am willing to devote my energy to reproduce and create more descendants for the dragon race. How can you use such an expression on such a sacred and solemn mission? To save the dragon race, I am duty-bound. You have to agree and support me. Respect, respect. Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes and cupped his hands to show that he had lost. The emperor smiled and stroked his white beard as he watched them bicker. That's enough. Both of you stop talking nonsense. Since everyone is here, let's talk about what happened in the past. Just now Long Tian has already told me all the secrets he knows. Let's also tell him what happened in the past. Now he has the right to know. The Black Dragon Emperor's smile faded when they started talking about serious matters. He said seriously, Long Tian, you and Ophiuchus don't have to continue searching for the Heavenly Dragon Emperor. Don't be too sad. He is not missing. He has really died. No one forced him and no one attacked him. This was his own choice. He is the wise man of the Dragon Realm, everyone's elder. He is also the greatest Dragon Emperor of the Dragon Realm. Long before you appeared, he had been investigating the ancient mysteries to find the truth behind the gradual decline of the Dragon Realm. He never married or accepted any disciples in his entire life. However, he was able to deduce the heavenly secrets and predict the future. So when you appeared in the Dragon Realm, the first person you saw was him. Do you think that was a coincidence? No, he has been waiting for you. Chapter 39:16. He's been waiting for me? Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows, feeling a little complicated. Actually, when he was reminiscing about the past, he had the same guess. Back then, when he ascended to the Dragon Realm, he appeared in the Star Source continent and was stranded in a mountain range. The first person he saw when he opened his eyes was his master, Dragon Emperor Fengtian. And Dragon Emperor Fengtian's cave abode was in the distant Sky Dragon continent. Back then, he also wondered if Dragon Emperor Fengtian was waiting for him. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? But Dragon Emperor Fengtian did not admit it. He said that he was on a business trip to the Star Source continent and coincidentally met him. Since his master said so, he did not think too much about it and did not dwell on it. Now that the Black Dragon Emperor brought it up again, he knew the exact answer. That's right. The Sacred Dragon Emperor stroked his beard and explained with a smile, your master deduced that the Dragon Realm had been punished by the heavens and that dozens of races had become sinners. This is the will of the heavenly Tao and cannot be reversed and saved. At least, the billions of demons in the Dragon Realm cannot do it. But there is one person who can save the Dragon Realm and get rid of the heavens' punishment. Ji Tianqing was stunned. That person is me? That's right. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor nodded at the same time and smiled at each other. Your master thinks that person is you. So, he waited for you to appear in the Dragon Realm and brought you back to the Sky Dragon Divine Palace to take you in as a disciple. At that time we did not understand. Your master never took in disciples, so why would he make an exception for you? But when you were still in the Dragon Realm, your master did not explain. We also observed you for many years and felt that your talent was outstanding. It was probably because of your master's love for talent. Until later, when you left the Dragon Realm and went to the Divine World. After another 200 years, your master seemed to have seen something when he divined the heavenly secrets for the last time. He found the two of us and talked to us a lot. At that time, he told us that the Dragon Realm had been punished by the heavens and the sinners. We've always been ignorant, but he's seen through everything and found a way to solve it. He told us that you were the key to saving the Dragon Realm. Although he was highly respected and the greatest sage, we did not believe him. But we didn't believe it at the time. We thought it was ridiculous. Even we, these peak divine kings, can't save the dragon race. How can you, a little disciple, possibly save the dragon race? What's more, you've already left the Dragon Realm for many years and never appeared. But your master insisted on this and left the Dragon Realm after discussing many secrets with us. At that time, he was determined to sacrifice himself and told the Ophidian that he was going to atone for his sins. Even though we don't know why or how he sacrificed himself. But he sacrificed himself for the Dragon Realm, which made us both shocked and grateful. In fact, after your master's sacrifice, there weren't many changes in the Dragon Realm, and you never appeared, so we gradually lost hope. Until a few years ago, when you returned to the Dragon Realm and caused such a huge commotion in the Star Source continent. From then on, we started to pay attention to you and have expectations for you. Until today, when you revealed those secrets, we finally believed that Your master was right. To break the dragon realm's heavenly wrath, we can only place our hopes on you. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor took turns to say these words, which gave Ji Tianqing a clearer understanding of the Heavenly Dragon Emperor's death. Seeing the two Dragon Emperors' burning eyes filled with hope and anticipation, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Don't look at me like that. Although my master firmly believes that I can save the Dragon Realm, I still have no clue how to do so. How can I save the Dragon Realm? The Black Dragon Emperor hurriedly waved his hand and said firmly, Little brother, don't belittle yourself. Your master won't joke around with his life. He has a lifespan of 100,000 years, but he only lived for 30,000 years before sacrificing his life. If you weren't the savior of the Dragon Realm, why would he sacrifice himself? Wouldn't it be better to live freely for another 70,000 years? The Sacred Dragon Emperor also smiled and nodded. Long Tian, we all believe that you can do it. We have no hope of breaking through to the God Emperor realm, but you have a high chance. When you break through to the God Emperor realm, you can interfere and use the power of Heavenly Tao. By then, you will definitely be able to find a way to save the Dragon Realm. I hope so. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and could only nod to show that he would work hard. He had feelings for the Dragon Realm and was even more grateful and respectful to the Heavenly Dragon Emperor. Therefore, he didn't want to disappoint his master and let his master's sacrifice be in vain. He wanted to fulfill his master's last wish and save the fate of the Dragon Realm. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had accepted the difficult task of saving the Dragon Realm, the Sacred Dragon Emperor and the Black Dragon Emperor both smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and asked, besides these, what else did my master say before he died? For example, did he find any clues about the ancient mystery and the heavenly wrath Dragon Realm? Also, where did he go after leaving the Dragon Realm? And where did he sacrifice himself? The Sacred Dragon Emperor nodded. Your master spent half his life researching the ancient mystery and the heavenly wrath Dragon Realm. Of course, he had some results and gains. He told us that the ancient era ended because of a great war between the gods. That was the largest and most magnificent battle since ancient times, and it directly ended an era. He speculated that in that great war, countless strong people and living creatures were destroyed. Even the world's structure changed because of it. The Black Dragon Emperor added, your master also said that the Dragon Realm was punished by the heavens and dozens of races became sinners. It was all related to that great war between the gods. Ji Tianqing narrowed his eyes and immediately thought of a key point. 30,000 years ago, the great war between the gods ended and the ancient era ended. A new era began. The mother of the human race, goddess Yao Guang, seemed to have fallen in that great war while fighting against the demons. And the five elements world, like the Dragon Realm and the Heavenly Realm, was originally an eternal world in the upper realm. It seemed that because of that great war between the gods, the five elements world fell into the mortal world and became an unknown lower realm. In that case, the Dragon Realm was also involved in that great war. If Master's guess is right, that great war between the gods is the key. As long as we find out the truth of that great war, we can solve all the mysteries and find out how to save the Dragon Realm. These thoughts flashed across Ji Tianqing's mind, and his train of thought became clearer. Seeing that the Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor did not speak, he asked again, regarding that great war between the gods, I have some key clues after being reborn in the lower realm. However, you still haven't told me where Master fell? Or rather, did he leave any clues or revelations after he fell? The Black Dragon Emperor sighed. The Sacred Dragon Emperor said earnestly, your master left the Dragon Realm alone and none of us followed him. Naturally, we don't know where he fell. But he was sure that he definitely perished in the starry sky. Perhaps he left some clues or revelations, but you need to find them yourself. Chapter 39:17. In that case, after I leave the Holy Dragon continent, I will go to the outer realm to explore. Neither the Sacred Dragon Emperor nor the Black Dragon Emperor had a definite answer about the sacrifice of the heaven-sealing Dragon Emperor. Ji Tianqing could only go to the outer realm personally and spend time searching for clues. Only then would he be able to find out the truth. The Black Dragon Emperor asked again, Long Tian, you said that you have returned from the lower realm and no key clues about the great battle of the gods. Can you tell us more? The Sacred Dragon Emperor was also interested and nodded in agreement. Only by understanding the great battle of the gods can we think of ways to solve the crisis of the dragon realm. Ji Tianqing did not hide anything and asked directly, you also know that there are 3,000 greater realms and billions of lesser realms in the lower realm. Although there are 9 galaxies in the upper realm, there are only 2 eternal realms, the dragon realm and the divine world. Don't you feel that something is missing? The Sacred Dragon Emperor and the Black Dragon Emperor looked at each other and frowned, deep in thought. That's right. Long Tian's words have enlightened me. Something is indeed wrong. I have considered this problem before. Only the dragon realm and the divine world are eternal primary realms. This does not seem to conform to the rules of the heavenly Tao. Especially when the divine world produced 5 god emperors and the dragon realm was punished by the heavens. One is extremely strong and the other is extremely weak. This does not conform to the rules of the heavenly Tao. The 2 dragon emperors seem to have woken up from a dream as a bold guess appeared in their minds. Long Tian, do you mean that there was another primary world in the upper realm? And the disappearance of that primary world is related to the great battle of the gods? Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. Both of you are indeed the dragon emperors. You understand immediately. It seems that you have also suspected this before. That's right. In ancient times there were indeed 3 primary worlds that existed eternally. According to the rules of the heavenly Tao, the most stable state was the tripartite balance. Therefore, the coexistence of 3 primary worlds was in accordance with the will of the heavenly Tao. However, the great battle of the gods at the end of ancient times destroyed the 3rd primary world. Hearing his confident tone, the Sacred Dragon Emperor and the Black Dragon Emperor were shocked and in disbelief. Are you sure? Brother, are you sure you are not making this up? If this is true, then this is too shocking. Ji Tianqing's expression became serious, and he said solemnly, I guarantee with my life that this is absolutely true. After the destruction of the 3rd primary world, it became extremely dilapidated and weak. It drifted down to the lower realms, stopping at the edge of the billions of worlds, becoming an unknown small world. And it was precisely because I was reborn into that world and cultivated again that I returned to the dragon realm. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor no longer had any doubts. They accepted this fact in shock. The 2 of them were agitated and quickly asked Ji Tianqing, what's that world called? Is that world still in the lower realm? Does it still have a chance to return to the upper realm and become the 3rd main world? Ji Tianqing patiently explained, that world is called the 5 Elements world, but I don't know what it was called as the main world in the ancient times. Now, it is no longer in the lower realm. I brought it back to the upper realm. Hearing this, the Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor were even more shocked and stunned. The 2 of them looked at each other and remained silent for a long time before they regained their senses. Long Tian, when you ascended to the divine world, you brought the 5 Elements world back to the upper realm? Are you out of your mind? You brought the entire world with you? Are you talking nonsense or did I hear wrongly? The heavenly Tao has its own rules and restrictions. You can't even bring one more living thing with you when you ascend. How can you bring the entire world with you? This is too preposterous. It's simply unheard of. Obviously, the 2 dragon emperors could not accept this and could not believe it. Ji Tianqing had already expected this. He smiled and said, if I brought a star from the lower realm with me, I would definitely not be able to ascend. But the 5 Elements world originally belonged to the upper realm, and was once one of the main worlds. So, I did not bring it with me when I ascended. I only brought it home. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor were stunned for a moment. They also felt that Ji Tianqing's words made sense and the shock and absurdity in their hearts lessened greatly. But the 2 of them were still shocked by this incident. Their understanding of the world was greatly impacted, and they would not be able to regain their senses in the short term. No matter what, this matter is too preposterous. Long Tian, if this happened to someone else, I would definitely not believe it. But you are an anomaly, so I can accept this shock. After all, you are the chosen successor of the heavenly Dragon Emperor, and also the hope of saving the dragon realm. No matter what happened to you, it is not surprising. Seeing the sacred dragon emperor's complicated expression but firm belief in his heart, Ji Tianqing felt a little emotional. Fate was really amazing. Who would have thought that before he entered the Yuanjue Grotto heaven, he and the sacred dragon emperor were only acquaintances and did not have a deep relationship. But in just one day, the sacred dragon emperor had become his son's master, and had even become a firm ally with him. More importantly, the sacred dragon emperor and the black dragon emperor both saw him as the savior of the dragon realm. Such a huge change in status and such a miraculous encounter in life. If it were any other divine king, they might not be able to hold it in. They would need at least a few months to calm down. But Ji Tianqing was different. He was calmer from start to finish. Even though his emotions fluctuated when he heard the two dragon emperors talk about the past, he was not agitated. It was as if he had a premonition long ago, which was why he could be so calm. Thinking about it carefully, although what happened today was miraculous, it did not happen suddenly. It was fated more than 1,000 years ago. All of this was just a matter of when the conditions were right. After a moment of silence, the three of them chatted for a while. Ji Tianqing asked the sacred dragon emperor if he could let him see the current Wuhan. He also wanted to know what Wuhan looked like now. The sacred dragon emperor looked awkward and explained awkwardly, "Long Tian, I am so sorry. Half a year ago, after Wuhan broke through to the Divine Lord realm, he wanted to go out and train. So I agreed to let him go to planet Songyue. But don't worry, although there is danger on planet Songyue, I have sent a few divine kings to protect him secretly. With his intelligence, I'm sure he'll be fine." Seeing Ji Tianqing frown slightly with a regretful expression, the sacred dragon emperor took out another light ball and injected his dermic powers into it. Instantly, a light projection appeared on the light ball and many images appeared. Most of the scenes in the images were near a divine palace. And the one who appeared the most in the images was a handsome young man who was about 15 or 16 years old. He was 7 feet tall. That young man was dressed in a black robe and looked extraordinarily valiant. His aura was cold and sharp like a sharp sword. Most of the time he was meditating to cultivate his sword Tao, or standing at the edge of a cliff or on top of a cloud, quietly comprehending his sword Tao. The person who appeared by his side the most was a little girl who looked like she was carved out of jade. Chapter 39:18. Even without the emperor's introduction, Ji Tianqing already knew who he was. The cold-looking young man in a black robe, who looked very similar to him in his youth, was Wuhan. And the cute little girl who appeared the most frequently beside Wuhan was his junior sister, Qi Linger. Ji Tianqing watched the scenes on the screen, while using the image recording crystal to record the scenes. It was not enough for him to watch it. He still had to show it to Yunyao, Jiku, Wushuang and the rest. After a while, the scenes in the crystal ball ended. The emperor kept the crystal ball and said to Ji Tianqing, "Long Tian, don't worry. I will take good care of Wuhan and wait for you to find him. You are his father. It is your freedom to take him away whenever you want. But I also know that you have a heavy responsibility and a blood feud on your shoulders. There are still many things you need to do. If you are worried that Wuhan will be affected by his cultivation and growth, then let him stay by my side." Ji Tianqing nodded and said sincerely, "Thank you, elder, for your kindness. When the time is right, I will take Wuhan away. But before that, I have a message that I hope you can pass on to him." The emperor nodded hurriedly. "Say it. I will pass it on to him without leaving out a single word. Wuhan, father, mother and your sister, we all miss you very much. Ever since we ascended to the divine realm, we have been working hard to become stronger and find you. Now that I know you are by Senior Shanglong's side, I can finally rest assured. You don't have to worry about us. I have already recovered to the peak of the divine king level. But I still have many things to do and may not take you away for the time being. You must believe in your master. Senior Shanglong is a trustworthy person. You don't have to be wary of him. Also, you have already reached the Divine Lord realm. You should have reached the end of the Sword Dao techniques and remarkable powers that I passed on to you. Since you mainly focus on swordsmanship and supplement it with the Dragon Clan's remarkable powers, you are walking the same path as me. Now I'll teach you the second half of the sword Dao cultivation technique and divine ability. Remember it well and practice it diligently. After that, Ji Tianqing told the Sacred Dragon Emperor about his swordsmanship and remarkable powers in a super long-distance video call. The Sacred Dragon Emperor then passed it on to Ji Wuhan. Logically speaking, every expert's cultivation method and divine ability would not be easily known to outsiders. The Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor were both present. With their memory, they could remember everything after listening to it once. But Ji Tianqing did not mind. He believed in the Black Dragon Emperor and the Sacred Dragon Emperor's character. Moreover, the two Dragon Emperors were already peak divine kings, who knew how many divine powers and ultimate skills they had mastered. At their level, other than God Emperor level treasures and techniques, there was almost nothing else that could pique their interest. Even if Ji Tianqing asked them to cultivate his sword Dao sacred art, they might not be interested. After Ji Tianqing taught them the cultivation method and remarkable powers, the Sacred Dragon Emperor said seriously, "Long Tian, leave this matter to me. When Wuhan returns, I will teach him." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, indicating that there was no problem. He then looked at the Black Dragon Emperor and asked, "Old Black Dragon, thank you for helping me so much. You spent so many years running around. I will remember this favor. Now that Wuhan has been found, do you want to rush back to the Dragon Realm or catch up with Senior Sacred Dragon?" The Black Dragon Emperor waved his hand and smiled. "I'm already tired of playing in the Dragon Realm. It's boring. Next, I plan to be a guest in the Heavenly Stalwart Star region and experience the beauty of the other races. Cough cough, I mean the local customs. If there is nothing else to do in the Dragon Realm, I don't plan to return for the time being. Besides the Heavenly Stalwart Star region, I am also very interested in the other star regions." Looking at the Black Dragon Emperor's smiling face, Ji Tianqing could guess what he wanted to do. He wanted to travel to the various star regions and find more women from other races to strengthen his dragon palace and contribute to the prosperity of the dragon race. But it was not appropriate for him to expose such things. After all, he was a senior. "All right. Then I hope you have fun outside and have many dragon children." Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and smiled mockingly at the Black Dragon Emperor. The Black Dragon Emperor spat out the tea he had just drank. He scolded angrily, "Little rascal, how dare you tease me?" "Ha ha ha." Ji Tianqing laughed heartily. At this time, the Sacred Dragon Emperor did not give the Black Dragon Emperor a chance to fly into a rage. He hurriedly ended this super long-distance video call. The light screen in midair dissipated. The secret chamber fell into silence and returned to darkness. Ji Tianqing looked at the Sacred Dragon Emperor's clone opposite him, stood up, bowed and took his leave. The Sacred Dragon Emperor's clone stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. He asked, "Although I guess that you still have things to do, I still want to ask you to stay. It has been 1,000 years. Do you not intend to stay in the Yuanjue Grotto heaven for a few days before leaving?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said solemnly, "Although I have not met the 5 God Emperors and have not exchanged blows with them, but Long Yin told me a secret. I feel that the situation is getting more urgent and I must act quickly." The Sacred Dragon Emperor nodded slightly and smiled. In the Dragon Realm, other than the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor who was more reclusive, I, the Black Dragon Emperor, and the Red Dragon Emperor all followed your master's lead. And now in the Dragon Realm, only the Northern Underworld cannot bear such a huge responsibility. I, the Black Dragon Emperor, the Red Dragon Emperor, and the Ophiuchus will follow your lead and help you save the Dragon Realm and take revenge. Here are some communication jade slips. Keep them and keep in touch in the future. Thank you, Senior. Ji Tianqing thanked him again and kept the dozens of jade slips. The Sacred Dragon Emperor stroked his beard with his left hand and waved his right hand. Go. Ji Tianqing did not stay any longer. He turned and left the secret room and walked out of the Heavenly Palace. Outside the Heavenly Palace, there was already a guard commander waiting. Seeing Ji Tianqing come out, the guard commander led the way for him and respectfully sent him out of the Yuanjue Grotto heaven. Half an hour later, Ji Tianqing left the Yuanjue Grotto heaven and stood under the blue sky and white clouds. He looked around and felt emotional. Ever since he defeated the Golden Origin Dragon Emperor, and took over the Xuanji Grotto heaven, he had left the Star Source continent. In these 2 years, he first went to the Heavenly Dragon continent, then to the Red Dragon continent, and now to the Sacred Dragon continent. Besides the Black Dragon continent, he had visited all 5 continents in the Dragon realm. Fortunately, all his hard work had not been in vain. He had finally found Wuhan's whereabouts. The huge rock in his heart had been lifted. He could now carry out his revenge plan with peace of mind and do more important things. Actually, he already had a plan in mind. As long as there were no problems in the Dragon realm, he would leave the Dragon realm and enter the extraterritorial galaxy to increase his strength and investigate the mystery of his master's death. Of course, he also had to find time to return to the divine world. Many years ago, when he escaped from the Boundless Heaven continent and the Reincarnation Island, he could not let go of those people and forces who had pursued him. In addition, he had left some forces in the divine world in his previous life. He was prepared to go back and see if he could still gather his old subordinates and expand his forces. Chapter 39:19. After leaving the Yuanjue Grotto heaven, Ji Tianqing flew into the distance. As he flew at a leisurely pace, he sent a message to Ophiuchus and Long Yan. Both of them were his most trusted friends and knew that he was searching for Wuhan. Now that Wuhan had been found, he naturally had to inform them so that Ophiuchus and Long Yan would not be worried. Besides that, he also wanted to ask Ophiuchus about the situation in the 10,000 Demon Alliance and whether the situation in the Star Source continent had stabilized. As for Long Yan, he also had to reveal some secrets to Long Yan. He had already confessed to the Emperor about his reincarnation and his deep feud with the 5 God Emperors. The Black Dragon Emperor would definitely know these secrets when he saw the Emperor himself. In that case, as his most trusted brother, Long Yan should know as well. Only then could everyone trust each other and form an alliance. Besides that, he also asked Long Yan about the current situation in the Crimson Dragon continent and his injuries. After Ji Tianqing sent the message, he stayed in the White Sea of Clouds and waited for Ophiuchus and Long Yan's reply. In less than 15 minutes, a communication jade slip flew over from the horizon. The first to reply was naturally Ophiuchus, alliance leader Luo Ho. Ji Tianqing's divine perception entered the message and Ophiuchus's voice sounded in his mind. He sounded happy and excited. "Congratulations, young master. Congratulations, young master. After so many years of searching, young lord has finally found little young master. Little young master is also blessed by the heavens. He was actually saved by the emperor and even became his last disciple. This is definitely fate's arrangement. Young lord, don't worry. Currently, the 10,000 Demon Alliance is the dominant force and intimidates the entire Star Source continent. No one dares to go against us directly. I have been managing the Alliance's affairs and steadily expanding and strengthening our power, gradually subduing the various regions. Young Lord's previous strategy has been very effective. Threats and promises have been used one after another to gradually control the entire continent. As of now, our alliance has controlled nearly half of the territories. Although the remaining half of the territories have the intention to resist, no one dares to actually do so. This old servant boldly predicts that in at most 20 years, they will be able to control the entire continent. Hermit congratulated Ji Tianqing first before he reported the situation of the 10,000 Demon Alliance and the Star Source continent. Seeing that the situation was going well, and everything was going according to plan, Ji Tianqing was relieved. In truth, with Alliance Master Luo Ho personally overseeing the Star Source continent, he wasn't worried at all. After waiting for another hour, the second communication jade slip flew over from the horizon and landed in front of Ji Tianqing. This was the message sent by Long Yan. Ji Tianqing could only imagine how shocked and surprised he must have been when he learned so many secrets. It took him such a long time to reply to the message. Most likely, Long Yan also took a long time to calm down. As his divine sense entered the jade slip, Long Yan's excited and trembling voice immediately sounded out in Ji Tianqing's mind. "Long Tian, my brother, you've been hiding it from me for a long time. I can't believe that so many things happened after you left the Dragon Realm. And after you died, you were actually able to be reborn. This is simply too amazing. Although I only know a portion of the secrets that Uncle Tianlong, the Black Dragon Emperor, and the Sacred Dragon Emperor told me. But the fact that you can tell me all these secrets proves that you treat me as your best brother. Don't worry, your brother will also support you. I will help you save the Dragon Realm and avenge you even if I have to risk my life. You don't have to worry about the situation in the Crimson Dragon continent. The Golden Crow tribe and the Luwu tribe are all well behaved and won't cause any more trouble. My injuries are also no longer a problem. I'll be able to recover after recuperating for another 10 years. Long Yan's character had always been like this. He was kind, honest, and loyal. He wasn't too shrewd or scheming. Ji Tianqing had been worried that Long Yan would have some thoughts and resentment. But Long Yan was so agitated and his words were so firm and intense that it warmed his heart and made him feel rather touched. With the support of these dragon emperors, whether it was saving the dragon realm or avenging the 5 god emperors, he wouldn't fight alone. Ji Tianqing kept the jade slip and looked at the yellow sunset. He sighed. In my previous life I was too cold and aloof. I did things my own way. Although I had the ability to reach the heavens, in the end I was besieged and died. And in this life I won't fight alone. I will gather more experts and fight alongside everyone. Although he didn't fight alone in the great battle in his previous life, there were at least a few thousand Sir Gods and more than 30 King of Gods who were willing to risk their lives with him. But those were all his subordinates. Only a few of them were his friends. Moreover, among his friends, none of them were peak King of Gods. It was different in this life. He had already befriended 4 peak King of Gods who were willing to fight alongside him. He could even mobilize 70% of the Dragon Realm's power, with the help of these Dragon Emperors. This was his power, the alliance he had formed. However, Ji Tianqing wasn't complacent, much less complacent. When he thought of the 5 god Emperor's strength, methods and schemes, he felt that the current alliance wasn't strong enough. He still had to work harder to increase his strength and let this alliance absorb more experts. His strength had to be even stronger. Go to the starry sky. After a moment of silence, Ji Tianqing made a decision. He raised his palms and urged his mighty divine power, striking out a sword light that cut through the sky. Crack! With a crisp cracking sound, a gap was torn open in the blue sky, revealing a pitch-black void. Ji Tianqing didn't hesitate. He stepped through the spatial crack and entered the void. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing appeared in the dark and cold void. Behind him was the Dragon Realm. In front of him was the vast and boundless starry sky with billions of stars shining brightly. Ji Tianqing took out the Burial of Heaven sword and let the Burial of Heaven fly into the depths of the void. He entered the sword world and took out the Jiutian Ten Absolutes pagoda, preparing to distort space and time to tell Yunyao and the others the good news. The Burial of Heaven sword flew in the void, and the Burial of Heaven's voice also sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. Where are we going? Without a target it couldn't act on its own and run around, right? Ji Tianqing replied telepathically, I might have to travel for many years to enter the starry sky this time. Could be a few decades or a few centuries. My goal is to travel to all the major starfields. First, to find opportunities. Second, to investigate the mystery of Master's death. Third, to increase my strength. Since I'm going to travel to all the major starfields, I'll start with the nearest Scorpio starfield. If there's any opportunity or something, just wake me up. Understood. The Burial of Heaven replied calmly. Thus both sides stopped talking. The Burial of Heaven sword flew toward the Scorpio starfield at a moderate speed. Ji Tianqing also returned to the distorted spacetime and woke up Yunyao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, Bai Long, Qian Yu, Black Dragon, and the others who were still cultivating under the sacred tree. Chapter 39-20. In the distorted spacetime, under the blood-flamed sacred tree, Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged on a short jade table in front of him. Yunyao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, Bai Long, and the rest were all awakened by his divine perception voice transmission. At this moment, everyone surrounded him and looked at him expectantly. Even Qian Yu and the Black Dragon had finished their cultivation, and gathered around him excitedly. Tianqing, you said you have good news for everyone. What is it? Now we have nearly 10 divine kings. Even if the others have not broken through to the divine king realm, they are still middle-level and upper-level divine lords. Brother Tianqing, are you planning to go back to the divine world to take revenge? If that's the case, then it's really good news. At least we can finally be of use. Everyone was talking at once. They all wanted to know what had happened. Ji Tianqing did not keep them in suspense. He smiled and said, ever since I left the Xingyuan continent, I have been looking for Wuhan. In these few years I have searched the Heavenly Dragon continent, the Crimson Dragon continent, and the Sacred Dragon continent. Although I did not go to the Black Dragon continent, I asked the Black Dragon Emperor to help me find out. Just yesterday, I entered the Yuanjue Grotto Heaven and found the Sacred Dragon Emperor's clone. It turns out that my initial judgment was right. Wuhan was indeed rescued by a powerful Dragon Clan warrior. And that peak divine king was the Sacred Dragon Emperor. When Ji Tianqing mentioned Wuhan, Yunyao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang and the rest were all stunned. Then they were pleasantly surprised. They could all guess that the surprise Ji Tianqing mentioned must have something to do with Wuhan. As expected. After hearing this, everyone was filled with excitement and cheered in surprise. Tianqing, have you really found Wuhan? That's great. Our family can finally be reunited. After more than 10 years, father has finally found brother. This is really a great surprise. I already said that Wuhan will be blessed by the heavens. Nothing will happen to him. Master, since you have met the emperor and found junior brother Wuhan, where is he now? That's right, old Ji. Don't keep us in suspense. Let Wuhan come out and meet everyone. We all miss him very much. Everyone was overjoyed and excited, and they couldn't wait to see Ji Wuhan. Yunyao in particular was both excited and nervous. She looked at Ji Tianqing with an urgent gaze. However, Ji Tianqing's answer was destined to disappoint everyone. Everyone, don't be so excited. I have indeed found Wuhan. However, the Sacred Dragon Emperor had been in outer space for the past few hundred years, and had only left a clone to guard the Sacred Dragon continent. I saw his clone and learned about this news, but I didn't see Wuhan. That year, after the Sacred Dragon Emperor had rescued Wuhan, he had brought him to the Heavenly Leader's star domain, and had never returned to the Dragon Realm. Seeing Wuhan's exceptional talent, the Emperor cherished him and took him in as his last disciple. Now Wuhan is cultivating and training in the Heavenly Leader's star domain. We will only be able to see him in a few years. After hearing his explanation, everyone was stunned for a moment. The joy and excitement in their hearts faded by more than half. Although everyone was a little disappointed that they couldn't see Wuhan immediately, overall this was still good news. Jiku saw that Yunyao's expression was a little gloomy and hurriedly comforted her. Eldest senior sister, although we can't see Wuhan for the time being, however, it is also very good to know his whereabouts and confirm that he is safe now. The Sacred Dragon Emperor is one of the 5 overlords of the Dragon Realm. He is one of the best among the peak divine kings. With him teaching Wuhan, I am sure Wuhan's skills will improve by leaps and bounds. Ji Wushuang and the White Dragon also spoke up to comfort Yunyao. Mother, as long as we know where brother is and confirm that he is fine, it will be fine. We will only be able to see him a few years later. That's right, mistress. We have waited for more than 10 years. A few more years won't make a difference. Yunyao nodded and smiled at everyone. She said with some emotion, don't worry, everyone. I am more than happy to be able to find Wuhan's whereabouts. Although we can't see him for the time being, I am also not in a hurry to wait a few more years. If he can cultivate peacefully in the Heavenly Leader's star domain, we will be able to see him sooner or later. Seeing that Yunyao had let go of her worries, everyone heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. At this moment, Yunyao continued, I just don't know if Wuhan has grown up after more than 10 years. What has he become? He must have suffered a lot while cultivating in the extraterrestrial galaxy? Even though she knew that Wuhan had already become the Sacred Dragon Emperor's last disciple. But as a mother, she would still worry about her son and worry for him. Ji Ku and Ji Wushuang were also very concerned about Yunyao's question. They looked expectantly at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing directly took out an image recording crystal and placed it on the short table in front of him. After I saw the Sacred Dragon Emperor's clone and found out about Wu Han's whereabouts, I also asked him the same question. Although the Sacred Dragon Emperor's original body and clone were separated by a few star domains, he had two special divine artifacts. However, he had two special divine artifacts. When they were activated at the same time, they could project and communicate from afar. At that time, Wu Han was cultivating in the Heavenly Leader's star domain and was not by his side. So the Sacred Dragon Emperor used a crystal to show me Wu Han's growth over the years. I wanted to show it to all of you, so I used this image recording crystal to record it. After explaining, Ji Tianqing injected his dermic powers into the image recording crystal. Instantly, the image recording crystal lit up with white light and formed a blinding white screen in mid-air. All kinds of images appeared on the screen, but the background was mostly a heavenly palace. Everyone stared intently at the screen. They looked at the heavenly palace in the images, as well as the handsome and cold youth in the black robe. For a full 7 minutes, hundreds of images flashed past. Everyone could clearly see that the black-robed youth in the images had grown from the initial 12 to 13 years old appearance to a 16 or 17-year-old appearance. Everyone was excited to see the black-robed youth cultivating, meditating, and comprehending the divine Tao. Smiles appeared on their faces. It's indeed Wu Han. He looks exactly the same as Tianqing when he was young. It looks like Wu Han did not suffer much by the Sacred Dragon Emperor's side all these years. Of course, Wu Han is extremely talented and the Sacred Dragon Emperor thinks highly of him. He will definitely not let him suffer. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years have passed. Junior brother Wu Han's appearance has not changed much. He looks only about 3 years older. This is very normal. After all, Old Ji and Yunyao have special bloodlines. Wu Han and Wu Shuang are both favored by the heavens and were born extraordinary. Not only does Wu Han look like a youth, but Wu Shuang also looks like a 12 or 13-year-old little girl. I just saw that Wu Han seems to have broken through to the Divine Lord realm. Everyone stared at the images on the screen and discussed fervently. However, Ji Wu Shuang was more observant and noticed a detail. She asked Ji Tianqing curiously, "Father, who is that girl who often appears beside brother?" Chapter 39:21. Hearing Ji Wushuang's question, everyone also noticed this problem. Thus, everyone's gaze fell on Ji Tianqing. "Tianqing, who is that cute and nimble girl in the blue dress? She has appeared many times. She seems to be very close to Wu Han. Master, could that little girl be the emperor's daughter?" Seeing everyone's confusion, Ji Tianqing explained, "Don't make wild guesses. Like my master, the emperor has never married or had any children in his life. He has never taken in a disciple. When my master saw me, he made an exception and took me in as his disciple. Because my master predicted that only I can resolve the crisis in the dragon realm and save the dragon realm. And that little girl is a little Qilin that the emperor met by chance when he was traveling in outer space. This involved the secret of the ancient war. The dragons, phoenixes, Qilins, and dozens of demons became sinners. The dragon realm was also punished by the heavens. Now there are no phoenixes or Qilins left in this world. The emperor felt that the little girl could be the last Qilin bloodline. So he brought her back to the sacred palace and took her in as his disciple. He named her Qilinger. Qilinger was the emperor's first disciple. Later on, the emperor saved Wu Han and took her in as his last disciple. Originally, Qilinger should have been Wu Han's senior sister. But Qilins are ancient mythical beasts and grow very slowly. Even though she is a few hundred years old, she still looks a few years younger than Wu Han. Therefore, the emperor made Qilinger his junior sister and Wu Han her senior brother. According to the emperor, they have a very good relationship. At the end, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but smile. Yunyao, Ji Ku Bai Long, and the rest couldn't help but smile. Only Ji Wushuang was a little confused and still worried about her brother. She muttered, from the image, that Qilinger seems to be more nimble and elegant. But I don't know what her nature is like. I hope she is not a troublemaker who always causes trouble for her brother. Everyone could tell that Wushuang didn't like or welcome Qilinger, who stuck to her brother all day. But this was human nature, and everyone expressed their understanding. Yunyao held Wushuang's hand and said gently, "Don't worry about your brother. The sacred dragon emperor is a peak divine king and controls the entire Tiankue star domain. In Tiankue star area, no one can cause trouble for your brother. He won't be bullied." At this time, Bai Long and Qian Yu both looked at Ji Tianxing and asked expectantly, "Master, you just said that the dragon realm is in danger and we have to save the dragon realm. What is this all about?" "That's right, old Ji. What ancient war? Heavenly wrath and sinners. Why don't you tell us more about it?" Up until now, many God King powerhouses in the dragon realm had heard about the heavenly wrath and the sinners. However, only Ji Tianxing, the sacred dragon emperor, the black dragon emperor, the red dragon emperor, and the Ophiuchus knew the details. He did not intend to hide it from everyone. After all, the people in front of him were the closest to him. Therefore, he spent another 4 hours explaining the matter to everyone in detail. He explained that Dragon Emperor Feng Tian had sacrificed himself, and that the god of the underworld was secretly supporting the Heaven Punishers. 4 hours later, Ji Tianxing told everyone all the secrets he knew. Everyone was enlightened. It was as if a new world had been opened up and they understood many things. Yunyao frowned and thought for a while before coming to a conclusion. She understood Ji Tianxing the best and naturally guessed Ji Tianxing's plan. In that case, the 5 god emperors are not in the divine world. They are all in the depths of the void, surrounding that foggy star and carrying out some unspeakable things. They are desperately oppressing the divine world and enslaving all the major star areas, so that they can obtain more cultivation resources to study that foggy star. What we need to do is not only to take revenge on the 5 god emperors, but also to save the dragon realm, which is suffering from heavenly wrath. With our current strength, we are still not strong enough to face the 5 god emperors. Therefore, Tianxing, you need to travel the void and investigate the mystery of Dragon Emperor Feng Tian's death, and find a way to increase your strength. When we are strong enough, we will return to the divine world to gather our former subordinates and further expand our forces. In the end, we will save the dragon realm, and with the help of the other dragon emperors, we will work together to kill our way into the depths of the void and take revenge on the 5 god emperors. And the greatest opportunity in secret is very likely to be that foggy star. Everyone listened attentively to Yunyao's analysis. Seeing that she was clear and organized, they all nodded to express their agreement. Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. "That's right, you know me the best. What you just said is my plan of action. However, this is only a preliminary plan. No one knows if there will be any changes. Therefore, we can only take one step at a time and see what happens." Jika's eyes were a little dim. He sighed. If the 5 god emperors had not broken through to the God King realm and were still peak god kings, with our current strength we would have been able to take revenge on them. At first, I thought that since we have all become god kings we would be able to help you. But I didn't expect that we would still not be able to help. Bai Long, Qian Yu and the others felt the same. After all, Ji Tianxing's strongest enemies were the 5 god emperors. Even the weakest of them were peak god kings. As for the few of them, they had either not broken through to the god king realm or had just broken through. With their strength and methods, helping Ji Tianxing to take revenge was simply suicide. Seeing that everyone was a little down and their expressions were a little serious, Ji Tianxing smiled and comforted them. "I am not worried. What are you worried about? The 5 god emperors are strong, but we are not fighting alone. We have many allies. Most importantly, we do not need to rush for revenge. The most important thing now is to continue increasing our strength." Yunyao, Jiku, and the others nodded in agreement. "Tianxing, you can travel the void in peace and look for clues and opportunities. We will continue to cultivate in seclusion and increase our strength. When you enter the heavenly stalwart star field and see Wuhan, you can wake us up." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "I have said so much today to let everyone know who our enemies are and what we are going to do, so that everyone can be mentally prepared. Don't worry, before the time is right, I will not take the initiative to meet the 5 god emperors. After all, I have caused such a big commotion in the divine world. They must have heard the news and know that I have returned. Now we have to be more careful." Jika suddenly thought of something and showed a worried look. He reminded Tianqing, since the 5 God emperors know about your existence, and they have control over several star fields, you must be careful when you travel the void. Don't fall into their ambush. Tianqing nodded to show that he understood, indicating that everyone did not need to worry. After a long time, everyone dispersed and continued to cultivate in seclusion with pressure and motivation. Chapter 39:22. The area under the bloody flame sacred tree regained its peace. Everyone had gone into seclusion to cultivate. Tianqing was no exception. After this period of consolidation, he had stabilized his 9th-tier divine king powers. He was prepared to continue cultivating the 5th level of the heaven punishment technique, and strive to return to his peak divine king powers as soon as possible. However, when he had told the emperor about the secrets, he had mentioned the heaven punishment array. Before he started cultivating, his consciousness had entered the Kenshin's tomb in his body to check on the sword array hidden by the fog. Now that he had returned to his peak, his powers were comparable to before, and his memories had been completely restored. He naturally knew that the so-called Kenshin's tomb was actually the heaven punishment array. It was a supreme treasure that was above the divine king realm and contained the supreme great Tao. In his previous life when he had died, he had relied on the heaven punishment array to preserve a wisp of his soul and reincarnate. And now the heaven punishment array was his greatest secret and also his most powerful trump card. After obtaining the heaven punishment array in my previous life, I had only scratched the surface of it when I was besieged by the 5 God emperors. In this life I must thoroughly study the heaven punishment array. After all, this treasure is my only hope of breaking through to the God Emperor realm. With this thought, Tianqing's consciousness entered the Kenshin's tomb and flew across the desolate wilderness to the edge of the fog area. Many years ago, he had cleared 80% of the fog area. The ground within a radius of 80,000 miles was covered with array patterns, showing the great Tao of heaven's secrets. It was a pity that he had not been powerful enough to break through all the fog. Therefore, his understanding of this sword array was not clear enough and there were still some flaws. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Tianqing stood in the middle of the sword array and faced the gray fog in front of him. He waved his hand and sent out sword light that blotted out the sky. Sword light flashed in the sky and golden light burst forth. Hundreds of sword lights slashed into the fog, creating a series of muffled sounds. The last 20% of the fog started to dissipate bit by bit, and more array patterns appeared on the ground. Tianqing had used a lot of energy to cast the array for an hour. In the end, the remaining 20% of the fog only managed to disperse a radius of a few thousand miles. After all, that 20% area was 20,000 kilometers in radius. The entire sword formation had a radius of 100,000 miles. Tianqing stopped and quietly adjusted his breathing. He couldn't help but sigh. The deepest 20% of the fog is actually so difficult to clear. Even with my current strength, I can only break through 85% of the fog. As for the remaining 15% of the array patterns, I'm afraid I'll have to wait until I recover to peak Divine King before I can see it. Although it was a little regretful, he was not in a hurry. The newly revealed incomplete formation had already given him new insights into the heaven-punishing divine art. Shua. His consciousness left Kenshin's tomb and returned to his body. Tianqing began to perfect the 5th level of the heaven-punishing divine art, further increasing his strength. The sword of burial of heaven continued to roam in the void as if it would never tire. A short month later he entered the Scorpio star zone. The last time Tianqing came here, it was to help Long Yin deal with the Golden Crow tribe leader. At that time, Tianqing entered the Scorpio star zone, and only moved around the Thousand Tree Star for a while before quickly leaving. This time he would travel the entire Scorpio star zone in search of clues and opportunities. The 3-foot-long sword of burial of heaven was as black as ink, as if it had become one with the void. After entering the Scorpio star zone, it flew as fast as lightning, and no one could detect it. Even a peak divine king would not be able to detect it as long as it was more than 100,000 miles away. In the next 10 days, it flew past several stars toward the depths of the star zone. Not only was it in charge of traveling, but it also had to investigate the situation in the star zone and help Ji Tianqing find opportunities. When it flew past those few stars, it had roughly investigated them. Seeing that there was no intelligent life on those planets, and that they were barren and desolate with nothing of value, it ignored them. Until the 6th day. When it approached a huge brown star, it suddenly sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! After a while, Ji Tianqing ended his cultivation and appeared in the void. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand and looked at the brown star nearby. He asked with his divine thought, "Burial of heaven, did you find anything interesting?" 36 days had passed in the outside world, and he had been cultivating in the distorted spacetime for almost 5 years. His strength had improved, and his divine path foundation had become more stable. This was natural. However, his strength had not improved by much, so there was nothing to talk about in detail. The voice of burial of heaven came into his mind and explained, "This star is uninhabited and does not seem to have any intelligent life, but it contains a lot of metal and divine stone veins." Ji Tianqing stared at the brown star. After a while he nodded and said, "You're right. This star does contain a lot of metal veins. A star with a diameter of more than 50 million miles. If there were a lot of metal veins, it would be a huge fortune." However, Ji Tianqing was not tempted. He muttered to himself, "Even if Yank and the Earth Spirit race can help me mine the metal veins and extract a lot of cultivation resources, I still have a billion miles of cultivation resources. However, I already have hundreds of trillions of cultivation resources. At the very least, I won't be lacking for a few thousand years. What I lack the most now is a king-grade divine artifact or a treasure above the divine king grade. I don't mind the resources of this star and directly refine it to strengthen the 5-elemental world." Thinking of this, his eyes lit up. He had found another way to quickly improve his strength. The burial of heaven said, "After ascending for so many years, you finally remembered this. The 5-elemental world is too weak. If you want to restore it to a primary world, you must refine a lot of stars. You have also merged with the 5-elemental world. If you can make the 5-elemental world grow quickly, your strength will also increase quickly." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Thank you for your reminder. This method can not only strengthen the 5-elemental world, but also increase my strength. It is indeed faster than cultivating in seclusion." After making up his mind, he descended on the brown star. He spent a few days to find the main vein of the star, the place with the most abundant resources. Then he took out the heaven-mending orb. Borrowing the supreme divine power of the heaven-mending orb, he used the engulfing divine ability and began to refine the brown star. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The heaven-mending orb released countless strands of white light that probed into the surface of the brown star and extended into the underground veins. At the same time, Ji Tianqing's palm shot out 2 white light vortexes that gradually sank into the earth and devoured the metal and ores. As time passed, the earth and mountains quickly melted and disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. The metal and ores in the brown star were all refined into various kinds of divine power and poured into the 5-elemental world. At the same time, Ji Tianqing also absorbed a huge amount of divine power to enrich his divine path. Inside the heaven-mending orb, the 5-elemental world that had been growing healthily once again welcomed a frenzied tide of growth. The entire 5-elemental world was enveloped by overflowing divine power. The mountains, rivers, and all living things were growing at a crazy rate. Even the continents were quietly growing bigger. The volume of the 5-elemental world was also slowly increasing. Chapter 39-23. After so many years of development, the 5 elements world had already expanded twice as much as before. Not only had the area of the sea expanded, but the continents had also become more vast. At the same time, the human race, demon race, and various other races were multiplying at an accelerated rate. The number of living beings between heaven and earth was also increasing exponentially, and many races that had never been seen before were born. Of course, living beings like the human race and demon race who knew the Tao of cultivation were rapidly increasing their strength. Not only were there many geniuses and powerhouses in every race, but there were also many true gods. In the past, the five elements world had an invisible curse. It was impossible for true gods to appear, and it was even more impossible for gods to ascend. However, after Ji Tianqing brought the five elements world to the upper realm, the so-called curse disappeared. Because, without the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, the five elements world could finally grow wildly. Not only did a few true gods appear, but there was even a heavenly god. When Ji Tianqing discovered this, he was very gratified and excited. Moreover, over the years, he would often put in large amounts of cultivation resources to nurture the five elements world. All living beings in the five elements world had long been used to the frequent spiritual energy storms, as well as the treasures and resources that fell from the sky and could be seen everywhere. The human race in the entire world called this change the spiritual energy recovery. They all believed that the five elements world had ushered in the most brilliant cultivation era. An entire month passed. This brown star was finally devoured by Ji Tianqing and the heaven-mending pearl. Needless to say, all kinds of metals and mineral veins were naturally devoured by him and the heaven-mending pearl. Even the soil and sand contained in the star were devoured by the heaven-mending pearl, turning into pure earth-type spiritual energy that was injected into the five elements world. In short, the star with a diameter of more than 50 million miles disappeared. The five elements world received a huge amount of spiritual energy replenishment, and for a long time it would grow wildly. Ji Tianqing also received great benefits, and his strength steadily increased. After the refinement, he put away the heaven-mending pearl and continued to fly on the burial of heaven. Just like before, the burial of heaven rushed on with the sword. He comprehended the Tao in the distorted space-time and comprehended the heaven-punishing divine technique. In the dark and cold void, the scene did not change, as if there was no time flow. In the human world, even if it was only 1,000 years, there would still be great changes. But in the void, nothing changed even after tens of millions of years. Such a short amount of time was simply too short compared to the seemingly eternal void. Therefore, the gods of the various worlds could only feel the insignificance and inferiority of life when they walked in the void. Many peak divine kings all had the great limit of 100,000 years of lifespan. In the god realm and the dragon realm, this was also an existence that was envied and revered. But compared to the starry sky that had existed for who knows how many billions of years, peak divine kings were also ants. It was exactly because of this that Ji Tianqing was the same as all the other god kings. When he roamed the cosmos, he would gain many insights. Soon another 2 months had passed. The burial of heaven passed by more than a dozen stars and found a waste star that contained a large amount of resources. Even though this faint silver star only had a diameter of 30 million miles, it was still very bright. There was no water, air, plants, or life on the planet. However, the surface of the star was covered with a metallic luster, and it contained countless mineral layers. With his experience in burial of heaven, he could smell all kinds of gems and metals. Swoosh! Thus, the burial of heaven sword descended on that star, and it awakened Ji Tianqing again. After Ji Tianqing appeared, he stared at the silver star for a long time before nodding in satisfaction. Although this star is much smaller than the previous one, it contains several times more metal materials and mineral veins, even though the value of the entire star was not as precious as a supreme-grade king-level divine artifact. But after careful calculation, the resources that could be mined from this star were worth at least 20 trillion. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time. He found the most majestic mountain range on the surface of the star and began to devour this star. The heaven-mending pearl released billions of white lights that extended into the star. Ji Tianqing also used his devouring divine ability. With 2 vortexes that were thousands of miles in radius, he crazily devoured the resources in the star. As time passed, this star gradually shrank. All kinds of useful substances turned into pure divine power and replenished Ji Tianqing's body and the five-element world. At the same time, near this silver star, in the void thousands of miles away from Ji Tianqing's body trembled. A dark golden divine ship was streaking across the void at lightning speed, flying toward the depths of the star field. Inside the divine ship, there were thousands of foreign race divine beings. Among them, there were 1,000 divine beings, all of whom were divine lords. The 5 leading divine spirits were all divine king realm experts. The strongest god king was a 7th-stage high god king. He was of a different race with a long snake-shaped head and multicolored body. As for the other 5 god kings, they were all middle god kings of the 5th and 6th stage. Their appearances were all different, and they were all very strange. While the divine ship was hurrying, the thousands of divine beings were conserving their energy. The 5 divine kings were gathered together to discuss important military matters. In another half a day, we will arrive at planet Qiming. Everyone cheer up. We will occupy planet Qiming in 10 days. General, we have dominated the Scorpio star field for so many years and have never failed. This time we will definitely win. Don't worry. That's right. Planet Qiming is just an ordinary star under Blue Scorpion Divine King. It is said that its master is only at the 7th stage. General, you will definitely win easily. 10 days later, we will take planet Qiming and report the good news to the evil soul domain lord. General, you will definitely be rewarded. Now that we are attacking everywhere, the Blue Scorpion Divine King is already in a mess. He will not be able to withstand a single blow. General, don't worry. Obviously, the divine beings on this divine ship were all under the evil soul domain lord. The evil soul domain lord was one of the 2 overlords of the Scorpio star field. He was even stronger than the Blue Scorpion Divine King. The generals under his command were certain that he would defeat the Blue Scorpion Divine King and become the Scorpio star field's master. Therefore, they all called him the domain lord. The domain lords of the God realm and the Dragon realm referred to the lords of the various territories. The domain lords of the outer realms were the overlords of the 9 major star fields. They were obviously more powerful. Therefore, the domain lords of the major star fields were either 9th stage divine kings or peak divine kings. The foreign race experts on this divine ship were ordered by the evil soul domain lord to attack planet Qiming, which was under the Blue Scorpion Divine King. Everyone knew that the hundreds of stars in the Scorpio star field all had their own star lords. As for those star lords, they were only temporarily under the command of the 2 overlords. Their loyalty was questionable. As long as they could break through planet Qiming's defenses and defeat Star-Lord Qiming would definitely surrender. In order to save his life, Star-Lord Qiming would immediately change his tune and submit to the evil soul domain lord. After all, Star Lords were fence-sitters. They could recognize anyone as their boss as long as they could keep their lives and their position as Star Lord. Chapter 39-24. 2 hours had passed. The divine ship carrying the god-level non-humankind beings flew for over 9 million miles in the void. The distance between the divine ship and Ji-Tianxing had also shrunk to a few 100,000 miles. The mid-level god kings were still bragging about the great general and god king Evil Soul's glorious achievements. Suddenly, the great general discovered that on the surface of a nearby star, there were 2 dazzling white halos and a dazzling white net of light. Look, what's that? The great general frowned and stared gravely at the star's surface. The few god kings stopped bragging and turned their heads to look. Seeing the scene on the star's surface, everyone was stunned for a moment before they started discussing in low voices. What's going on? It seems like someone is casting a spell on that useless star? What spell? Is someone setting up a great array there? That net of white light is the network of a great array. It's at least tens of thousands of miles wide. Heavens, such a huge array. Are they trying to build a teleportation array? You mean to say that the experts under God King Blue Scorpion want to use the teleportation array to send people to ambush us and catch us off guard? After a few words of discussion, the God Kings were filled with vigilance and murderous intent. The great general decisively ordered, attacking Qiming planet is important, but the situation here is highly likely to be God King Blue Scorpion's scheme. We must investigate this thoroughly. If we can foil God King Blue Scorpion's scheme, it will be a great merit. Let's go and see what's going on. Thus, the divine ship immediately changed direction and flew toward the two halos and the huge net of light. Ji Tianqing was focused on casting a spell and happily devouring the star. He originally thought that this useless star was unremarkable and that no one would notice him. But he didn't expect that after 2 hours of casting a spell and tasting the sweetness, an uninvited guest would arrive. Swoosh! A dark golden divine ship that was 3,000 meters long descended from the sky and landed above his head, shining with dazzling divine light. Immediately after, the cabin door of the divine ship opened. A foreign god with the head of a snake and wearing a leather vest flew out with a spear in his hand. Behind him were 4 grotesquely shaped, ugly gods of other races. They were also carrying all kinds of weapons looking murderous. Ji Tianqing could tell with a single glance that these 5 alien god kings were natives of the Scorpio galaxy. They clearly had ill intentions. However, he wasn't worried at all. He simply withdrew his palms and put away the 2 white light vortexes. As for his heaven-mending orb, it was still floating in the air, releasing billions of rays of white light as it devoured the power of the stars. Those 5 foreign race god kings were also people who knew what was good for them. After shooting a glance at Ji Tianqing, their gazes landed on the heaven-mending pearl. Immediately, the eyes of the 5 god kings lit up as surprise and greed flashed through their eyes. From the looks of it, this guy isn't setting up a formation. Instead, he seems to be devouring the power of this useless star. Look at that orb, its power is so pure and powerful. Heavens, that pearl's aura is several times stronger than a high king-level deity artifact. Could it be a supreme-grade deity artifact? Haha, brothers, we've hit the jackpot. We actually found such a treasure here. A supreme-grade deity artifact. It's rare to find one in the entire Scorpio galaxy. To think that we actually found one today. Could this be a fortuitous encounter? The 5 alien god kings exchanged glances and discussed secretly with each other through voice transmission. They were all very excited and agitated. Previously, they had only been vigilant and on guard, checking the situation to see if anyone was plotting something. However, that was no longer important at this moment. Just that powerful and mysterious orb was enough to make them cast aside their rationality and become crazed and greedy. Of course, they still went through the formalities on the surface. The general pointed his spear at Ji Tianqing from above and bellowed, "Bastard of a foreign race, are you a subordinate of the Blue Scorpio God King? How dare you secretly set up a deity array here and try to harm us? You're finished. Just surrender." There was no air in the void, so it was very difficult for sound to travel out. Therefore, everyone communicated with their divine senses. As a result, there was no language barrier. Ji Tianqing glanced at the general and sneered. "A subordinate of the Blue Scorpio God King? Where did you guys come from? From your tone, you should be an enemy of the Blue Scorpio God King?" The general did not care about what he said at all. As if he was singing a one-man show, he shouted angrily, "Good. You really are the Blue Scorpio God King's lackey. Despicable bastard, since you're so treacherous, don't blame me for being merciless. Generals, listen up, take down this foreign race." Following his order, the 4 middle-level God Kings who had been rubbing their palms for a long time immediately waved their sabers and Kenshin soldiers, attacking Ji Tianqing from all sides. The general did not stay idle either. His figure flashed across the void and headed straight for the heaven-mending orb. His goal was very clear. The 4 God Kings would delay Ji Tianqing, while he snatched the heaven-mending orb. There was nothing wrong with this plan, and it happened so suddenly. If it was an ordinary high-level God King, they would be at a disadvantage immediately, and the heaven-mending orb might be snatched away. However, the 5 foreign race God Kings did not know how terrifyingly strong this foreign race youth they were facing was. Just like an uncivilized wild beast, too barbaric and lowly, Ji Tianqing curled his lips in deep boredom. He raised both his hands and shot out dozens of sword lights, chopping towards the 5 foreign race God Kings. Only pung-pung-pung sounds could be heard, and rays of dazzling divine light lit up. The 4 middle-level God Kings were all struck by the sword lights. Their bodies spurted out blood of various colors, and a pile of arms and legs fell off. The general who tried to snatch the heaven-mending orb was also sent flying 100 miles away by the two sword lights. The long spear in his hand was sent flying, and the right arm he stretched out to snatch the heaven-mending orb was also chopped off by the sword lights. In a split second, the 5 god kings were all injured. They were dripping with blood, and they let out painful screams. Ji Tianqing still did not take back the heaven-mending orb. He said to the 5 injured foreign race god kings, "This king has nothing to do with the Blue Scorpio God King, and even more so with your forces. This is a lesson for your greed. Disappear from this king's sight immediately. Otherwise, this king does not mind killing all of you." After saying this, Ji Tianqing did not look at them again. He continued to urge the heaven-mending orb to devour this star. He originally thought that this lesson would be deep enough to make the 5 foreign race god kings retreat. However, he underestimated the attraction of the heaven-mending orb and the greed of the foreign race god kings. These 5 foreign race god kings had roamed the Scorpio star zone for thousands of years. They had never tasted defeat or humiliation, and they were used to being cruel and domineering. Even though they were injured by Ji Tianqing in one move, they knew that Ji Tianqing was very strong, but they did not give up. "Damned bastard, you have successfully angered this king. You are dead meat. In the Scorpio star zone, no one has ever dared to humiliate this king like this." The general picked up the long spear and right arm, cursing with grief and indignation. Then, he opened the cabin door of the divine ship and summoned nearly 1,000 monarch god experts. Book Guest House Reading Website. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.